us, you've got anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Amen. Amen. Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Members of Council, the first order of business is the adoption of the Council minutes of June 29th. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Any comments or questions or changes recommended? Having seen none, all those in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. This time I'm going to ask for any disclosures of a pecuniary interest by any members of Council. Councillor Pietrangelo.
Thank you, Worship. Wire transfer to Niagara Catholic District School Board, my employer.
Okay, so noted. Any others? I have a conflict with regard to check number 329729, payable to myself. This time we're going to entertain deputations this evening. I do have first on the list Project Share, 10 men in a tent event. I'm going to ask Mr. Jeff Geraci and Tim Parker to come forward, please, from Project Share. Jeff and Tim, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Unfortunately, Lane Harvey, our Executive Director, couldn't make it this evening. My name is Jeff Geraci. I'm the Resource Development and Communication Coordinator for Project Share. And I bring greetings from Project Share to this Council. And just to talk a little about the dilemma that we're facing now at the agency. As you know, we help residents of Niagara Falls that are living below the poverty line with basic needs, such emergency needs as housing, utilities, transportation, prescriptions, and obviously emergency food. Currently, we're facing a large increase in volume of people that are coming to Project Share requesting help. Since January of this year, we're experiencing a 14% increase in visits of families wanting assistance. In June alone, we saw a 22% increase in visits. This translates to over 100 families daily that are coming for emergency food alone. For reasons of the increase, we can only speculate that it's the current economic climate that is triggering this effect, not only here in Niagara, but across the country. If you're able to read today's Niagara Falls Review, you've also noticed that our annual summer food drive was down 30% in comparison to last year. Our goal is to acquire 1 month's worth of food supply, which is 42,000 pounds. We came short. We raised 23,734 pounds on the one day alone, which equates to just over 2 weeks' worth of food for the food bank. So that being said, what I'm about to introduce to you couldn't come at a better time. A few weeks back, we had Bob Gale. He caught wind of our situation, and he decided to do something about it, something big for us in the city. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tim Parker from General Manager Ripley Entertainment to announce some of the details for what is planned during the dates of August 17th to the 21st. Tim?
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I guess when I was talking to Jeff and to Bob about the situation, I found it very hard to believe that we would have such a crisis in the city, coming up from a family that I've never had to worry about my next meal or my next set of clothes. It's very difficult to understand how something like this could happen in any community. So with talking with Jeff and Bob, Bob, who's a local businessman in town, came up with an idea of 10 men in a tent. And right away, our Councillor Jim Diodati jumped on board. It was his idea that he always wanted to be in a tent with 9 other guys. And anyways, to really fully understand what really, I guess, poverty or going without or homeless or having a tough time, we wanted to understand what it really felt like, to talk the talk, do the walk. It's easy enough for the 10 people involved in this, for all of us to write a check and say, here you go, thank you very much, goodbye. But it doesn't really cut it when you're not understanding really what you're facing. And it was our idea, the 10 of us, that instead of actually just walking out one day and handing over some money or getting some food, we really wanted to to understand what it meant to try to figure out where your next meal is coming for the next morning and where your next dime is going to come to pay your rent or whatever. So we decided that the 10 gentlemen involved, myself, Bill Burke, Dino Fazio, Kevin Greeley, Dave Martineau, Brian Pello, Rob White, and Dr. George Makis, we decided that we were going to stay in a tent on the corner of Mount Rose and Thorlstone for 5 days, starting Monday morning right on through to Friday night. And with the bare essentials that people in this city would have and face every day, wondering when we get up in the morning where our next meal is going to be, sleeping outside in the tent in the cold, not in the heat, not these days, in the cold, wondering if we're going to make it the next morning. And we really wanted to understand this. So we came up with this 10 men and a deal. We're going to stay there for the whole week. We're not going to have any food other than what we would get from the Project Share or the soup kitchens, typically just soup or even peanut butter for the week. We're hoping to raise enough money that week, or food, to take Project Share through till Christmas or even after that. That's the most important thing. We have pledge sheets going on. There's a website, www.10minuteinatent, that people can go to. There'll be a live webcam where you can watch us each and every day. Not in the tent, though, of course. And we'll be there, understanding and really trying to figure out and doing a lot of thinking and get some soul searching to understand what everybody else goes through in the city that is in this situation. We've got some other charities on board that'll come to the tent every day right beside us, light up a nice barbecue and cook some real great meals for other people to come by and purchase and donate while we stand there and smell it and not touch it. We also will probably go to the Project Share warehouse one day and help sort food and get all the food on the shelves that we're going to collect for a week. Some of the other groups that are involved in this are going to help us with the barbecues through the week. Our Tender Wishes, Niagara Falls Community Outreach, Big Brothers and Sisters, Winter Festival of Lights. We got Johnny Rocco's coming in to do some cooking as well. Gino Strangers from Monticello's. We've got some people from Casamia. All these people are going to come every day and cook a nice barbecue. So we'd like to see you guys all come by and during lunch hour and help support us. I think it's important that the community understands and sees what goes on in this community and how well off we really are. And I would ask all of you to think about this and go home every night. Set a tent up in your backyard and sleep there for 5 nights and not watch TV or play cards or have coffee or talk on the phone. We're all businessmen, and we've decided to take a week off of work on our own money, on our own dime, and do this for Project Share and hope that the people in the community understand really what's going on around them. So at this time, I'd like Jim Diodati to make a deputation for us, please.
Okay. Councillor Diodati, you got a motion?
Thank you, Worship. And just before I do, as you can see, Your Worship, the gloves are already off. And already there's been a lot of chatter through email back and forth amongst the people. And this is going to be very interesting to have a bunch of, aggressive kind of individuals in a small tent. And it's not that big considering there's quite a few of us, and some of us are bigger than others. Oh, hey, wait a second. Remember, Your Worship, that was my joke. It was your minds, everybody. If only they knew the emails, Your Worship, that have already gone back and forth. And especially a guy like Tim Parker, Your Worship, because when he found out there were no pedicures or manicures, he was very upset.
But he will have his slippers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very good, very good. Yes, he will. That was allowed. We all agreed because he was very upset. And Your Worship, some of us are not the camping type, so it makes it very difficult. I know, Tim's version of camping is Holiday Inn Select without buffet breakfast. And we told him, no, there's going to be a tent. And as he mentioned earlier, too, Your Worship, there'll be a barbecue every day, but we're not allowed to eat it. So we really, really took away all the niceties of life to make this as real as it could be. But what we really need, it's not about us, it's not about attention, it's not about just driving by and making fun of us. I mean, that's part of it, I know. But it's more about, can you please drop off some food? Can you please drop off some money? Can you please drop off, because there's a lot of people a lot less fortunate than us, Your Worship, and nobody should go without eating. I mean, there's a lot of suffering, but not eating is one of the worst. So, Your Worship, I would make the motion at this point that we declare the week of, August 17th through the 21st, Project Share Week, in honor of 10 men in a tent, Your Worship.
Good. Moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. Certainly any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Iononi.
I'm just curious, do you have to check your blackberries at the tent too? Because I'd like, yes,
Yeah.
all right.
No blackberries. Because of business, we're allowed a half an hour in the morning only.
Okay. Well, I think it's certainly a commendable event. And I think it's a great idea. It's really, really innovative, and I think that certainly the community deserves to support this, and I'm sure they will. So, Councillor, I want to thank you and the others for coming up with the idea, and I wish you well that week. Some of us will be out of town at the Association of Municipalities Conference in Ottawa, so we couldn't join you, but we do support you and will make a contribution. So I know members of council will certainly be behind you 100%. So I want to commend the citizens, the public as well. Hopefully they will support this event, and I think it's an excellent idea. So I'll call for the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and good luck. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. At this time, I'd like to ask if I could, Hanya Goforth of the Coronation Center, along with Lois Finkbeiner, to come forward, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senior of the Year Award is an annual award established by the Government of Ontario, which gives each municipality the opportunity to honor one outstanding local senior. Recipients are individuals who have enriched the social, cultural, or civic life of the community without the thought of personal or financial gain. Lois Finkbeiner has been a member of and a volunteer of the Coronation Center for 6 years and was recently nominated as the Coronation's Volunteer of the Year. Throughout the course of time, she has provided her personal expertise and knowledge by serving on many committees, including the Advisory Committee and the Programs and Services Committee. She's also a greeter at the Center as well. She works in the Coronation Center clothing closet, volunteers in the Craft House Cafe, and helps at most of the Center's special events. When Lois isn't at the Center, which isn't very often, she volunteers at various events around the city. For the past 5 years, Lois has also volunteered for the Festival Lights, helped at her local church, and the local food drive with Project Share. Lois is truly deserving of this award and is an inspiration to other volunteers. It is with great respect and admiration that tonight we thank Lois Finkbeiner for her many years of volunteer service to our city and congratulate her on receiving the 2009 Municipal Volunteer of the Year Award. This award on behalf of the Council of the Province of Ontario. Congratulations.
This is a great honor, and it's more than what I really expected. How can you be rewarded for doing something that you really love to do? And that's what I do. I just love to do. I give my time because that's what I like to do. So, and when you're rewarded like this, it's just unbelievable. So again, I say thank you, and to all my friends who came, and my family who came to watch. Thanks for sitting around and waiting.
At this time, we're going to move on to Development Charge Report, MW20009-53, the Development Charges Background Study and Bylaw. Mr. Clerk.
Your Worship, at the last council meeting, we had the required statutory public meeting under the Development Charges Act. There were comments that were made, and staff was directed to come back. We've prepared the report that's before you this evening, and also the bylaw that's required to be passed. We've had 4 requests to speak to the matter this evening, and they're listed in your additions. So I would suggest that you hear those next, and then if there's questions afterwards, staff and Mr. Watson, who's here, will be willing to respond. The 4 requests to speak are Tom Richardson from Sullivan Manny on behalf of Warren Woods, Glenn Wellings on behalf of Villerboit, Italia Gilberti from Broderick and Partners, and Joshua Kaufman representing Oakwood Place Shopping Center.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll entertain the deputation. So I'd like to call forward Mr. Tom Richardson of Sullivan Manny to speak first, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'll be very brief. I appear this evening on behalf of Warren Woods Land Development Corporation with respect to your proposed development charges bylaw insofar as it affects the Warren Woods development. We have provided an area plan showing the location of the first phase of Warren Woods, which is to the south, and on that plan then it's at the top of the map rather than at the bottom. Warren Woods will be affected by the relocation and construction of a portion of the Warren Creek. The city, in cooperation with Warren Woods, has already called for tenders for the construction of the relocated channel to be constructed at the same time as the servicing internal to the subdivision. This was done in order to save money for both parties. City staff have worked closely with our engineer in determining the appropriate costs to be incurred for the drainage works. While the drainage works, Mr. Mayor, will pass through the lands of Warren Woods, the drainage works are not intended to serve Warren Woods, but rather the lands lying to the north, including development which has already occurred north of McLeod Road and which is shown on the plan before you. All of those lands which have developed north of McLeod Road have developed with the contemplation that the storm drainage will ultimately be accepted through the realigned and reconstructed Warren Creek drainage system. Indeed, the storm water facility located on the north side of McLeod Road is designed to outlet to the system proposed to be constructed southerly from McLeod Road and through the Warren Woods lands. This system was contemplated as far back as the Garner Secondary Plan in 1997 and in the Warren Woods Watershed Plan in the early 2000s. Development to the north of McLeod Road has paid development charges which were based on the 2004 development charge background study. Included in the development charge was provision for the Warren Creek Phase 1 works. Consequently, this council has recognized that these works are appropriate to form part of a citywide development charge. The proposal in the development charge background study before you this evening continues that work contemplated in the 2004 background study. My purpose in speaking to you this evening is to thank your staff for the cooperation and assistance which they have shown to our client and advise you that our client is now in agreement with the figures which your staff has recommended in the background study in the report which you have this evening. Our client has no objection to the development charge for residential purposes which is before you this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, there may be questions by members of council. Any questions by members of council? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'd like to call on Mr. Glenn Wellings, representing Villerboit. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, Your Worship, council members. I'm here tonight on behalf of Villerboit. Villerboit owns lands that were formerly owned by the city at the intersection of McLeod and Montrose Roads, right across from the McBain Community Center. You will hear from Mr. Kaufman from Smart Centers or Oakwood following my presentation. We do have some similar concerns to the development charge bylaw. In terms of Villerboit, they filed a site plan application just prior to Christmas of last year, and we have been working very diligently with your staff as well as region staff and provincial staff to move this forward. It's been a challenge, but the site plan does include a fairly comprehensive commercial development, including the provision for a new Lowe's store. It's hopeful that the site plan will be approved fairly shortly. The expectation is that the portion of the development, if not all the development, will go forward this coming fall. The problem that we face tonight is the development charge increase. The proposed increase in the non-residential development charge couldn't come at a worse time for this development in terms of budgeting and in today's economic climate. I do realize you need to bring forward a development charges bylaw because of the expiry of the previous bylaw. And in terms of Mr. Holman's report on the matter, I do note that it is comprehensive and it appears to recognize the economic situation that we do now face. While the proposed increase or decrease in non-residential, the non-residential rate within the core tourist area, may serve as a stimulus for growth, the increase in the development charge outside of the core tourist area will have the opposite effect. It certainly isn't not an impetus to my client to move forward with the development. In fact, it's cause to reconsider his position on that matter. Just a couple of options. I want to try and be constructive, Your Worship, in terms of putting options forward. Our preference would be to freeze any increases in development charges, and I acknowledge that has been raised by previous stakeholders in the process. That would certainly send a strong message to both the business community as well as my client in terms of the current economic climate and allowing him to move forward with his development under the current charge. I do note that other municipalities, for example, the City of Toronto, have implemented a freeze in terms of development charges to stimulate growth in the economy. If the implementation of a freeze does create some concerns for council, I would suggest that some form of grandfathering clause be included for applications like my clients that are in process and fairly advanced in terms of process. And one suggestion I would have is that we be required to draw permits before the end of the year or within 6 months of the development charge bylaw. I've spoken with my client on that, and that's very much achievable in terms of where we stand today in the process. I guess another further alternative could be to phase in the full development charge from the the entire development charge up to the $6.06 provision. That's something I have briefly discussed with Mr. Holman. But, Your Worship, I'm certainly throwing out options, but right now I can tell this council that my client's very concerned with the increase, concerned to a point where he's considering whether he wants to move forward. And I certainly want to see this project move forward. I think it's an important project for the city. And what I would really like is the opportunity to try and work under the current development charge bylaw and obtain permits on that basis. There are other significant financial burdens with the development of these lands. The Ministry of Transportation improvements, for example, are fairly extensive. There's a number of capital projects, signalization and installations and improvements. So development charges is just one aspect of fairly significant costs, and they all need to be weighed. So, Your Worship, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you
very much, Mr. Wellings. I know that certainly your client has been trying to deal with the matter. They've been waiting for the Ministry of Transport in the region to come to terms, along with certainly Mr. Kaufman and his proposal as well, and others. So that has been delayed unnecessarily by other forces beyond your client's control, I realize. But there may be questions from members of council. Any questions for Mr. Wellings? Okay, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'd like to call forward Ms. Natalia Gilberti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. Very briefly, I'd like to thank city staff and also Mr. Watson, your consultant, for not only hearing the concerns of the developers of the core tourist area, but actually listening to them. On behalf of many developers, I'm here to ask that you kindly adopt and approve of the staff report. We feel that it's fair, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comment. Any questions of Ms. Gilberti? Thank you very much again. This time I'm going to call forward Mr. Joshua Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman, please come forward. Welcome.
Good evening. Your Worship, members of council, my name is Josh Kaufman. I'm here tonight on behalf of Smart Centers. I have a few notes and excuse if it appears to be repetitive to Mr. Welling. Some of the same concerns may be echoed, but I think it's important at least to try and get our point across as much as we can. Just to identify in terms of what Smart Centers has in terms of holdings in the municipality, you recall that last year around this time there was a zoning application for 35 acres of land located at the intersection of Oakwood and McLeod, so just south of McLeod, off Oakwood, around the S-turn, 2 parcels, the north and the south side, again totaling about 35 acres of land. Over the past number of years, Smart Centers, as agent of Oakwood Place Shopping Centre, has been an active participant with our proposed developments in the City of Niagara Falls and Greater Region of Niagara. Oakwood Place Shopping Centre has reviewed the City of Niagara Falls 2009 Development Charge background study, as well as the staff recommendation. The following comments are based on those documents in regards to concerns over the proposed increase in development charges from $2.80 a square foot to $5.40 a square foot for the non-residential development charge outside the core tourist area. Oakwood Place was drawn to the City of Niagara Falls over 3 years ago, in part due to our tenant, in addition to obviously a desire to relocate and expand their operations. Our tenant I'm referring to is our anchor being Walmart. In addition to the attractive municipality, development charge policy, location, amongst other things. A large sum was paid for the land unzoned. However, we found that the attractive development charge policy, in addition to obviously our tenant interest, allowed the development to be financially viable. The proposed development charge increase seriously threatens the financial viability today of our project at McLeod and Oakwood. Along the premise that growth should pay for the impact of growth, Oakwood Place acknowledges that development charges are an effective measure to promote growth of the financing of city works and improvements. It is also recognized that in setting development charges, cities and municipalities are exposed to consistent increases in the cost of construction and aforementioned city infrastructure, given the toll and impact of growth. As such, Oakwood Place is willing to accept a reasonable development charge based upon entitlements of the Oakwood Place development and the City of Niagara Falls' current development charge schedule. The Oakwood Place Shopping Centre will account for today's, based on today's rate, $1,181,600 in terms of local charges paid to this municipality. In our difficult economic climate, businesses and municipalities alike are challenged to identify and exercise sources of local economic growth while maintaining or reducing expenses. Commercial real estate development has traditionally served as an economic catalyst through development charges directly benefiting the city, providing numerous construction and engineering jobs during planning and development, and many service-related jobs in long-term operation of the shopping center for residents of the municipality. Today's climate, characterized by tight credit, sagging rents, if at all we can get any rents, makes it difficult for a municipality and its residents to benefit from the positive impact of new commercial development. The proposed Oakwood development will stimulate economic activity in the city and in the node at Niagara Square. However, its financial viability suffers, again, from the tight credit and balancing below market rents. The proposed increase in non-residential charge in the core tourist area from $280 to $540 represents a 92.9% increase and imposes an additional $1,097,200 increase into our already development charges of $1,108,000. In any economic environment, this is a substantial increase that seriously threatens the financial viability of commercial development, thus risking our initial $1.1 million investment. In addition, let's not lose sight of obviously the region of Niagara. And obviously I know I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the city bylaw, but of course we'll be making the same representation at the region. I hope you can appreciate that. In addition, the region of Niagara Falls is proposing a 137.9% increase in regional development charges from $3.88 to $9.23. The increase in regional development charge represents an additional cost of $2,038,805 for the proposed Oakwood Place Shopping Center. Combined with the proposed City of Niagara Falls development charge increase, the total DC for the proposed center will increase from $2,818,960 to $6,173,860, a difference of $3,354,900. Cumulative, the proposed represents a 119% increase. Oakwood Place is committed to the City of Niagara Falls and believes in the economic benefit of a new shopping centre, as you all have last year, and would like to work cooperatively with the City in evaluating its development charge policy. In light, we have a few recommendations and alternatives that this Council and staff can consider. And again, I'm not reducing the impact and the work that's gone into the recommendations from staff and the revisions that were presented today. They obviously are acknowledged, so thank you for that. One option, cancel, or I hate to use the word cancel, but let's reduce the proposed development charge increase. Second, freeze proposed development charge increases until at least fourth quarter of 2010 to get ourselves a chance to go get our feet wet, get our anchor firmly in place, similar to Mr. Welling as it relates to his client's anchor, get a good first-run effort in terms of our developments, and allow it for an opportunity for other out parcels to follow shape after that, which we probably could deal with some of the DC increases on. And third, as Mr. Welling mentioned, a phased period of proposed development charges over the next 5-year period. We understand, obviously, we're not all getting hit with the first increase, and we recognize, obviously, there is a climb over the next 5 years. I'm suggesting merely that the increase be something minor. We're willing to accept the DC, willing to accept an increase. Let's make it a minor, and let's spread it evenly over the next 5 years and make it a little more palatable for everyone. Oakwood Place, thanks, everyone, obviously, for all your attention, and I apologize if I appear long-winded. I hope we got our point across, and I'm here, obviously, to answer any questions, should you have any.
Thank you. There are some questions, Mr. Kaufman, so I'll call on Councilor Peter Angelo first.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Kaufman. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
A couple of times in your presentation, you referenced $5.40 per square foot. The staff recommendation is $4.43 per square foot. You realize that?
And I think what ultimately, and I maybe want to direct this to Mr. Holman, I think there's the further increases that come after that. So the initial increase is the $4, but it's the overarching, once you get to the ultimate amount, comes up to the $5.40. Am I correct on that?
We'll get that qualified. Mr. Holman, did you correct that,
Mayor,
please?
just to clarify, the study that was completed by Mr. Watson's firm recommended an increase from $2.80 to $6.06. The staff recommendation is to meet the increase halfway, which is would implement a $4.43 per square foot charge effective the 2nd of August.
Okay. So it is
clarification. So we still are referencing, obviously, the I guess
so
prior to the 12th.
Slightly less.
So we're about down $1, I guess. Is that
right.
what we're up to?
Down $1, yeah.
Yes, Councillor.
Your Worship, just another clarification. One of the options that you would consider, as well as the gentleman from Villeroy, would be a 6-month window to apply now. Is that something that you mentioned?
I did not mention the 6-month window. I think more so is I was saying let's extend it for the opportunity to get out to 2010 as an option, so to freeze and put all development charges, any increases on hold until in the fourth quarter 2010. So almost, I guess, we're looking about 1 year.
Until the fourth quarter 2010?
Yes.
I see.
Perhaps, Mr. Kaufman, you may qualify. We were hoping you'd start your construction soon. I know you had contemplated July. We're into July now, but can you share with the Council when you propose to start your development?
Your Worship and Councils. If all goes well, we should be in the ground doing some of our pipe work and our underground work in addition to our earthworks as early as next week. With that, it'll allow us to start doing some pad prep. My intentions are to go ahead and apply for building permit for the anchor prior to September 1st.
Prior to September?
Prior to September 1st.
Okay. Perhaps I could ask through Council, I'll ask staff, Mr. Holman, is there any way we can accommodate the schedule that Mr. Kaufman is proposing? He's so close to the time frame in terms of implementation.
Mr. Mayor, as you know, we need to have a new bylaw that comes into effect on the 2nd of August, and whatever rate we set here will have to apply. It would be Council's discretion to make a determination as to if a prepayment arrangement might be acceptable, given the fact that the project is so close. But that's something that we haven't really thought about, and I don't even know if that's what Mr. Kaufman is offering.
And knowing that Mr. Kaufman certainly has been ready and he's been held up because of the lack of an agreement between the region and MTO, and we've been working on this for the last couple of years now, so anticipating that, so I know there'll be other questions, but thank you very much for your input. Yes, Councillor, actually I have Councillor Iononi and Councillor Pietrangelo. Okay. At that point, Councillor Pietrangelo, please. Yes, okay.
Your Worship, the stage at which the building permit fees have to be paid are, through you to Mr. Holman?
Yes, Mr. Holman, when are building permit fees payable? What stage?
We paid at the building permit stage?
At permit stage, as soon as they're taken, as soon as they're applied for?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, does that answer the question, Council?
And I mean, if Mr. Kaufman plans to go forward, yeah, I meant DCs. I meant DCs.
The charges and permits.
Yeah, I meant DCs, but it's
Yes.
at the permit stage, is it not?
Mr. Holman, perhaps the development charges then payable are payable when?
Development charges for non-residential construction will be must be paid at the building permit stage.
Okay, at the same time. Okay, that's qualified. So building permits and development charges.
And that's what I thought, Your Worship. So, I mean, if Mr. Kaufman plans on going forward by September 1st, obviously your building permit would come by September 1st.
I think the application, would be made, through your worship to Councillor. The application would be able to be in September 1st. I don't know in terms of the turnaround time from the actual permit.
And Councillor,
perhaps we can ask someone on staff then, Your Worship, whether or not the 6-month window would be sufficient.
sure. And a solicitor wants to make a comment here, but Mr. Beeman.
Well, I was just going to say, Ms. Mayor and members of council, that the building permit, the development charges are payable at the application stage, and certainly there's nothing preventing Mr. Kaufman from applying at his earliest opportunity. It's not payable at the time the permit's issued, so that there could be some staging of the building itself if for example, he could apply for a foundation permit rather than the entire building, if that's what he elected to do. Mr. Holman also mentioned the possibility of some kind of prepayment agreement. Certainly, if that were proposed, we could discuss it.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman, I know you're so close that, and you've been planning this for a while, that you told me initially July 1st you thought you'd be starting, so you're very close. I understand that. Do those proposals or those recommendations fit within your proposals?
Oh, it's very palatable. Of course, it definitely, it's a good stimulus to at least go ahead and get the anchor underway. If obviously we're being still under consideration, obviously, and the assumption is, I think I heard through your worship to Mr. Holman, I'd heard passing the bylaw would be the second week in August. So it may require that some extra effort be put into accelerating the building permit application.
Mr. Beeman, you wanted to make another comment?
Well, I just wanted to say that staff are sympathetic and would be recommending some accommodation because of the history of the. There's been as far as staff is concerned, the Ministry of Transportation for Ontario has been very difficult to both the Smart Centres proposal and the Villerbach proposal at this intersection, and along with a couple of other smaller developments. And certainly, I think it would behoove the city, and we would recommend accommodations if any can be developed that are acceptable.
I think that was our point, so that's appreciated. Yes, Councillor Iononi.
Just some clarification to that then. So do I understand that if we pass this tonight with the recommended increases that are before us, that Mr. Kaufman's development would not have to pay the increase? I see we're passing a report tonight, and we're already making amendments to the report we're looking to pass. I just want to understand clearly, if we pass this tonight, will Mr. Kaufman's development have to pay the increase? Because I think we should no ambivalence needed here. Because if we look at it in the most simplistic terms, we can't afford not to implement the increases because we have costs we have to pay. So
perhaps let's ask the question as to if we pass the matter tonight on the approval, when does implementation begin? Would that help you?
And is he asking for an amendment to the implementation?
Well, let's just see if we can work that out. So at this time, Mr. Holman, if we pass the motion tonight to draft a bylaw, when would the bylaw take effect?
The new bylaw will take effect August 2nd.
I understood that.
Okay.
So,
and the fees would be payable, new fees would be payable for any application after that point, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So
to that point, Mr. Beeman.
No, sorry,
that's not
the
right.
clerk's correcting us.
Okay.
I believe the bylaw expires August 2nd.
Yes.
Okay. But if you look at the bylaw that was sent to you, line number 23 says the bylaw shall come into force on July 20th, 2009. Tonight's date,
I
if it's
understood that.
passed. So there may
It's
have been
reading here.
some change between, you know, what staff's original intention was, but that line number 23 clearly states that if it's passed tonight, it takes effect tonight, as we usually do with bylaws. However, I think there had been some discussion that it would take effect upon expiration of the old bylaw. But the way it reads
It's
right
in here.
now, it doesn't say that.
Okay, so Mr. Beeman just stood up and said, we understand the MTO has been difficult, we understand we'll take concessions. We knew bringing in a new development charges bylaw that it was going to be contentious with one group or another. I think Mr. Holman has done an outstanding job in bringing this compromise to council. If we pass this tonight, it's in effect. Mr. Kaufman has said, phase it in, I need some sort of amendment, I need some sort of relief. He explained the cost increase. Mr. Beeman said, we'll look to accommodate. What are we doing here? If we pass this tonight, is he paying the increased cost? That's what I'd like someone to accept. Because my understanding would be, and I'm prepared to support the report before us, but I need to know, are we going to pass it tonight and make an exemption tonight? Because it doesn't seem to be that our bylaw will have a whole lot of teeth if we're exempting already.
Our CEO is going to address that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think what you're hearing from the staff, Councillor, is that the staff recommendation is before you. If you would like to accommodate some of the ideas that you're hearing tonight, those would have to be specific amendments that we would then make. And the view is that those amendments could be accommodated. However, you should be aware that any amendments you make further to the rates means that there's going to be additional shortfall, which you should be aware of if those rates are adjusted in. So those can definitely be accommodated. If there's significant changes to the bylaw, we may need to be back here next week at a special meeting just to approve the bylaw. But the things that are talked about tonight, if that's the will of council, those changes could be made and could be accommodated.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Todd. I understand it a whole lot better now. I'm not prepared to look at any concessions. I think we either have to bite the bullet and make the increases that staff have prepared for us, and I don't think we can make pass this report and in the same breath make amendments to the report. Tough decisions. We're in a tough economic time. We can't afford to do anything other than pass the recommendations in front of us. And it's no disrespect to Mr. Kaufman or his development, but financially the city really isn't in a position to do anything other than pass this report.
I just note, Councillor, that it does say, the background says that the bylaw will come into effect on July 20th, and we have a term of 5 years unless otherwise amended. So the question I would have to staff is that if we make the implementation date the 2nd of August, is that going to work on approval tonight by changing that one time? I'll ask Mr. Todd that question.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think in order to clarify, if there's further amendments tonight, I think we'd need to be back next week with another bylaw anyway. But I think what we're hearing is that, and I think it was the intention of staff, that the new rates, even though the bylaw would be passed tonight, that those new rates would become effective on August 1st. And I believe that was the intent. I'm sorry, on August 2nd. August the 2nd.
Okay. Is that so that's clear then? Anybody have any questions about that? Yes, Councillor Carrio.
Question would be then, if he came in with a building permit prior to August 2nd application, would he be paying the old rate or the new rate?
Good question.
Well, through Mr. Mayor, it would be our view if the rates came in on August 2nd, any application made prior to that would be under the old rates.
You're going to have a rush rate application.
Okay. Well, we do have, this project has been ongoing for the last couple of years, as you know, so it's not as though it's something that's out of the blue. Mr. Kaufman, is that achievable by your company?
I appreciate your worship, Councillor. I appreciate the comments, and I understand the position that the city's in, and recognize from our company standpoint, obviously, this is something which we weren't expecting. Obviously, when we do a perform and development application, you anticipate when you spell out development charges and you're showing municipal rates, everything standard indexing, and recognizing there's every 5 years there's going to be an increase. So there's obviously some room we put in there, not to this extent. So when I back up the new numbers and take off the dollars, so it's not $1,181,000, and it's $1 million that we're dealing with. Our building is 181,000 square feet. So we're still dealing with about $1 million increase. I appreciate everything we're saying here. I am not far enough along in my design, even if I worked around the clock, to be able to accommodate August 2nd for a permit submission. I was racing myself based on trying to get to September 1st, so it's not going to be possible.
Okay, pleasure of council.
Are you looking for a motion to move the recommendations, or are you
Well, we
looking
do
for
have
a
the
motion just to deal with Mr.
Well, we have the recommendation. You've heard Mr. Kaufman's plight and Mr. Welling's concern about his clients, so we're trying to accommodate them, and the question is how quickly can they submit an application? And Mr. Kaufman's saying he can't do it until September 1st, so the pleasure of council. At this point, we have recommendations before us.
I'm going to move staff's recommendations.
Okay, moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Peter Angelo. Any further discussion or comment? Councillor Wing.
Well, Mr. Kaufman just referred to the amount of the rate increase being more than expected, and I think that's largely driven by the legacy costs from the Garner-Grassy Brook overrun. To me, what would be most fair would be to allocate those costs associated with that growth to growth in that area. So if we did that, if we had that special Garner-Grassy Brook area rate, so the costs can be recovered from where they were incurred. If we did that and then discounted the outside the core tourist area commercial rate, what would the impact be then?
It probably would be greater, but I'd like to ask Mr. Holman a question.
I'm saying take off the Garner-Grassy Brook rates from the overall calculation, allocate them to the area for which they were incurred, and then do the same calculation that has been done to mitigate the effects of the increase. So you discount the outside the core tourist area rate following the Garner-Grassy Brook adjustment to half of what it would be to mitigate the impacts.
The clerk is indicating that the answer you have to your question is on the top of page 8. So, Mr. Holman, could you respond accordingly as well?
I'll try, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, scenario 3 basically contemplates that issue, taking the cost of the Garner-Grassy Brook sanitary sewer works and allocating it specifically to those properties that will develop in that drainage area will result in a difference in the development charges for residential rates. About $4,000 difference in residential rates, and also a difference of about anywhere from $1.82 inside the core tourist area up to $7.28 for non-residential development in that Garner-Grassy Brook area.
Okay, and I saw that. What I was wondering is if you did that and then have the 434 outside the core tourist area rate. Is that, at the bottom of page 9, there's a discussion on how staff wanted to mitigate the effects of the new rate increase. And so staff are recommending that the outside the core tourist area rate be discounted by the median value of the calculated increase. So if you discounted the median value of the calculated increase of 434, I mean, is this a possibility?
Mr. Holman?
What we're talking about is a difference of about 10 cents. 10 cents a square foot.
10 cents a square foot. Okay, thank you. Members of council, any further discussion? We have a motion to move the recommendation. Having seen none, we'll call the vote then. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda is PD 2009-44, the condominium conversion information report. I'm going to call in our planner to make comment, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report responds to a request from Council to review its policies with respect to condominium conversions that go on within the City of Niagara Falls. These are conversions from rental to home ownership. In reviewing a number of the applications or questions that Council put to us, one of the matters was tenant rights. These are outlined in the report, specifying that the tenant has the first right of refusal for any unit that's offered in the building. They are subject to the Residential Tenancy Act and therefore cannot be evicted by virtue of conversion to a condominium. The rules that typically apply for Residential Tenancy Act with respect to evicting a tenant because they want to use it for personal use also do not apply. There are no public requirements for the tenants of buildings to be notified of conversion. Our city staff have done that as a matter of courtesy. It often creates a false impression for the tenants that they have a chance to come before council and resolve certain landlord-tenant issues, such as cleanliness of the building, condition of the building, and so on. Those are not actually aspects the city council has any jurisdiction over. We're suggesting that we discontinue the process of notifying tenants of the council meeting, but still require that the landlord hold a public meeting with the residents of the building to explain the process and explain their rights and supply a copy of the minutes from that meeting to the city. With respect to the city's vacancy rates, we have in our official plan a requirement that council not approve conversions when the vacancy rate is 3% or less than 3%. This is a very standard rate across the province. It's also the rate that's applied by the region in their regional policy plan as well, and we believe that this standard should be maintained. The question was also asked whether or not we could implement some additional requirements with respect to controlling conversion by regulating whether the units could be converted, whether they fell above or below the average rent for a similar sized unit in the municipality. We looked at that opportunity. Only the City of Toronto, to our knowledge, uses that kind of formula. The information that we get, we don't gather our own information on rental rates. We use the rates from CMHC. That material is collected every October. It's available to us in December, and typically rents go up in January of the year. So our information would always be 1 year out of date with respect to conversions. We're not sure that there would be any substantive benefit to introduce such a policy. We were also asked to look at taxation relative to the property because there was a multiple family rental project pays a higher property tax than a condominium project. A condominium, each unit pays the same rate as a detached dwelling, and so we were asked to look at that if the city was actually losing money relative to conversion. We had only 3 projects for which data was available. Of those 3 projects, one actually went up and was paying more property tax after conversion. One stayed exactly the same, and one saw a decrease in taxes relative to the amount that they paid prior to conversion. So again, there was not sufficient data to say whether the city would be better off or worse off. The one thing that we did find, and this was a question of the councillor put to them by the member of the audience, and that was that whether or not the tax increase could or should be passed on to the tenant. That is actually a requirement of the Residential Tenancies Act, that any increase be passed on, and so that's something that has been clarified as well. Anyway, we're making a recommendation that we continue with our 3% policy. We're suggesting that council discontinue its notification of conversions to tenants, and that we not adopt the practice of connecting conversions to the rental rate. That's the information in the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. I have questions by members of council, Councillor Wing and Councillor Thompson. Councillor Wing?
Thank you. First of all, I strongly disagree with the recommendation that the city discontinue the practice of notifying tenants when this is coming up at council. I think it's really important even if staff think it might be holding out false hope, I think it's really important for people to know when matters affecting their homes are going to be considered here. So I don't want to see that discontinued. But we had quite an extensive discussion downstairs about affordable housing in our community, and this report is very much related to the one that we were considering downstairs. And I'd like to quote something else. And there's a February 25th, 2008 letter from the senior planner at the region regarding the Bethlehem projects development. He said, a majority of new housing built in the city is for single detached housing or other forms of home ownership that are not affordable for a growing number of people. There has been a lack of new rental apartment buildings built in the community, largely due to high construction costs that tend to make rental tenure unprofitable for most developers. The Section 99.1 bylaw that we were talking about downstairs would address this situation along with the Green Oaks mobile home situation. When I raised this at council and asked that staff look into the Section 99.1 bylaw, I mentioned only Green Oaks, but I had this in mind as well. The motion downstairs was for deferral until staff finished examining the entire situation, but part of the motion was that staff look at the affordable housing situation in our community, and particularly the October 2004 report, People Needing Housing, a Collaborative Strategy for the Niagara Region, which was prepared by SHC Incorporated for Niagara Regional Housing, and to particularly look at the implications of the affordable housing gap, as well as the demolition and conversion of existing rental housing. That's what we're talking about here, is the conversion of existing rental housing. So I would think that while we are still examining the whole issue, it would be premature to approve the report before us tonight, and I'll hold off on deferring until after Councillor Thompson's had a chance to speak, but I'll reserve the right to take the floor again after that and move deferral of the report till we finish looking at the broader issue.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I have to echo the comments made by Councillor Wing with respect to the notification of residents in an atmosphere of openness, transparency, and accountability that we're supposed to be in. Why would we even be suggesting that we don't notify the people who are going to be directly affected? I think that's really a regressive suggestion and step, and I certainly wouldn't support that. And why would we be concerned about people coming here to make a submission with something that is going to directly affect their lives? I have a little different perspective with respect to condominium conversion. Condominiums, I think, are fine. When you get an apartment that exists for many years and then all of a sudden there's an application for conversion, I have a real problem with that, mainly because the legislation at the provincial level really doesn't protect the tenants involved in those situations. And I brought it up here on a couple of occasions, asking a resolution to the province to look at the condominium legislation to protect residents who live in a conversion situation, to protect them. You have, and I have a personal knowledge of a situation where during the process that somebody acquired the property and was converting it and got approval through this council to convert it to condominiums, they sold a couple of units and were collecting the condominium fees. There was no accountability to the residents. There was no accountability with respect to the fees that were being collected. And in fact, after a couple of years, they found out that most of the units had been rented, and they found that the people who were involved had taken the fees and left the condominium situation in a desperate. They're supposed to have a certain percentage of the rent set aside for remedial work and repairs, etc. The one I'm talking about, the people can't even sell their units simply because everybody says, what is a reserve fund? It's depleted, and therefore everybody walks away from the situation, and these people are in jeopardy with respect to their investment. The other situation is that they convert them, they sell 2 or 3 units, the rest of them are owned by the landlord, and the landlord controls everything that happens there, and the residents really have no say in what is going on because the majority of the votes for choosing the board, choosing the management company are all with the landlord, who has a converted facility, but only a few apartments sold, and this is again very unfair and not a good situation for the tenants. So I think there is all kinds of problems with these conversions that most people are not aware of unless you experience these things personally. I really think that the province has to take a serious look at this whole issue of existing facilities being converted to condominiums and put in some legislation that clearly controls the situation from the time somebody sells a unit until the time the board is formed, and this is formally taken over as a full condominium facility. And in most cases, the ones we're converting, they never get to that point, and the people are there in jeopardy, and they suffer as a result of this situation not following through. So personally, I'm going to take a strong look at any of these conversions that are being brought up of existing buildings simply because they just don't work, and the legislation isn't there at the provincial level to protect the people and their interests that they've and their finances that they put into the facility.
Okay, Councillor Wing.
I think first of all, I'd like to move a resolution to the province that Councillor Thompson's concerns be investigated. You know, it's we're creature of the province, and you know, we have Section 99(1) if we want to pass such a bylaw, but that's really the only control we have over these kind of situations. I think again, there's wider issues. You know, I'll hold off on deferral if we want to get a letter to the province through first.
Well, you may not have a response that quickly, so that may take a long time.
Okay, well, tell you what, I'll just throw that as part of my motion to defer this till staff conclude their investigations as per the motion we made in corporate services, and along with that, that we send a letter to the province outlining our concerns with conversions.
Motion to defer. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Ioannoni. No discussion to this. I'll call the defer. Yeah. Motion to defer this report. Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to the next item, the supplemental report 2009-51. Mr. Clerk.
Well, in light of the fact you deferred the previous report, I guess you have an obligation to ask if there's anybody in the gallery related to this report.
Yes, I believe there is. Are there people present? Could you please raise your hand? We have 1, 2, yes. Okay. Mr. Clerk, you want to hear from them and, at this point? Did you want to make, pardon?
Through the chair, I would suggest that any of the residents who are here would be allowed to speak first, and then Mr. Sinclair on behalf of the applicant.
Are you a resident? Would you like to come forward? Please come forward.
Mr. Sinclair did have all the tenants together.
Your name for the record, please.
Denelda Warren, 4218 Portage, apartment 104.
Okay, thank you.
He did speak with all the tenants, and it seemed like there'd be no problem. Everything seemed in our favor. And then I hear Mr. Thompson and Ms. Wing speaking, and then I'm wondering, I just got a letter today saying you were meeting about this tonight. And so I thought I'd drop over and see what it was about. But I didn't realize the province wasn't ready to be behind us. And with Mr. Sinclair speaking, he's had personal experience converting to condos, and everything seemed perfect. So we just like to watch as it goes along because it doesn't seem to be perfect.
Let's just see what Mr. Sinclair has to say. Sinclair, would you like to come forward, please?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I would just say this, that under the present legislation in the apartment building, the Residential Tenancy Act applies. It also applies when a building is converted, it applies as well. Okay? So tenants are protected. I disagree with saying that tenants aren't protected. They are protected. Also, under section 51 and 52, they take out sections 48 and 49, where this was, I think, pointed out, that a landlord right now, I have apartments in St. Catharines, I can give notice to a tenant that I'm going to move in. I get my daughters in. I can do all kinds of things like that. Once I convert, I cannot do that. So the tenants actually are in better, in my respectful opinion, are in better condition with a conversion. Also, when it's converted, a lot of buildings are run down. For example, in Dorchester, you people consented to that one, and the applicants there spent $245,000 in improvements, external improvements. So, I mean, they were forced to do that to accommodate parking. In this particular application, there's a lot of conditions in here. There's 10 conditions we have to undertake. So the tenants, if anything, the fire department's going to go through it. We have technical stuff that we have to do. All kinds of things. They have to pay 5% park dedication. Apparently, the Ontario Building Code is involved in one unit. We have to meet that. So the building actually will be improved. And I think the tenants understood that. And I think I had 7 tenants on the meeting on June the 22nd. Spent quite a bit of time, about an hour and a half to 2 hours with them. And I think they were basically satisfied. And I think they're going to be in better condition on this particular building if it's converted. And that's the law. The law is the Residential Tenancies Act, and it applies. So I'm a tenant there. They can never get me out. And the guidelines for rent increases are the same. And it's a better situation. It's a better situation for the tenants.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Sinclair by members of council? Okay, we do have the matter before us. Mr. Clerk, notwithstanding the motion prior in this matter?
Well, the first report was related to process or procedures. This report's related to a specific application, one that was deferred back in December, and I think related to what was proposed in the first report, the process that Mr. Sinclair engaged in was to have the tenants at the location come to a meeting. As Ms. Warren said, she was satisfied with what was said at this time, so I see nothing procedurally that stops you from approving the recommendation report if you see so fit.
As you know, this matter has been deferred, and Mr. Sinclair has met the request, and we also have had a chance to confirm the vacancy rate, and that is higher than we had expected or we heard prior. So the pleasure of council. Councillor Maves?
Excuse me, I just wanted to ask one question before we make the motion. You spoke to seven tenants?
Yes.
7 units?
Yes.
And how many units are there totally?
There's 19.
19? Okay. No, I'm just curious because the last time we met, we had several people here that tenants were totally unsatisfied, and now we only have one person here. So you have satisfied those?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we had a very, very, very good meeting. The people were all hostile. They weren't hostile at all. They were very. It was very, 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 very successful meeting.
Yes.
Excuse
to
me,
that point,
I think Ms. Warren has
would you like to come forward again to answer that question, please? Please come forward.
I spoke to several people, Mr. Sinclair, several people in the garden and in the parking lot. No one knew about it, and I'd had a letter because the first meeting in June, I guess, I wrote that I'd like to hear how it goes through, and then Paul sent me a great big letter, and then they said that July 20th, 7 o'clock, and I spoke to 4 or 5 people putting up my garbage, and nobody knew about it except myself.
Just on that point.
Yes, Councillor Peter Angelo.
I mean, this was part of the public meeting last time. We would imagine that the residents would have been notified again this time. Were they notified?
Question then through planning, Mr. Hurlovich?
Yes, Your Worship, I would have to check and see. I know there was some confusion over the conversion because this was scheduled for a couple of different times, and I know that information went out to the tenants both from staff and from Mr. Sinclair, and they did have different dates noted. Was my impression that we had actually sent out a notice to advise them of the correct date.
Mr. Irafita?
I would just add that I know Mr. Sinclair set up the meeting with the residents on June 22nd, which was a week before the proposed date that this matter was going to come, and then it wasn't come, so we could have that supplemental report, the first report, available. So I don't know, I would think that the residents would be aware that the matter was coming. Whether planning sent out notices, I don't know. We're not legally entitled to under the Planning Act, which is the point of the first report.
Mrs. Warren?
Because of this, we started a tenants association meeting. We have a president, Carla, and she didn't know, and her car was there. And if she doesn't know, it hasn't filtered down.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you. And while Mr. Irafita says that we're not legally entitled to notify them, I think we told staff that night to make sure that they were notified. It seems to me, particularly with Carla not being here and Janice informs me that she's away, that we need to defer this so that there can be full consultation with the residents that we said we would notify. The ambivalence of the date and the notification of this meeting alone is enough to make me look at deferral. So I'd like to defer this to another meeting so that all the residents can have adequate notification, including the head of the Residents Association.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Wing. It's non-debatable. We have a motion before us to defer this and to make sure that the tenants are circulated the notice of the meeting. So all those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Clare. We'll try to set that up with staff and the attendants. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, could you introduce the next item on the agenda, please?
A public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw to permit a 6-story, 58-unit condominium apartment on the north side of Dunn Street opposite of Atlantis Avenue. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, June 19, 2009, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment or to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Hurlovich to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Worship. This project is brought forward by Pinewood Homes. It's a proposal for a 6-story, 58-unit apartment building on the north side of Dunn Street. It's the vacant property immediately to the west of Cavendish Manor. It's depicted on the screen in front of you. The property is 1.5 acres of land on the north side of Dunn Street, immediately opposite Atlantis Avenue. To the left or west of the property is Niagara College, Maid of the Mist campus. To the north is a Joie de Vivre retirement home. To the east is Cavendish Manor, beyond which are a number of residential properties. South of the property are residential properties as well as a small commercial plaza and an apartment building on the southwest corner of Atlantis and Dunn, and a number of residential properties southwest of there. There's also a large commercial parking lot to the southwest as well. The site plan before you tonight is to provide for a 6-story apartment building with 58 apartment units. The site plan shows 2 driveways going into the property. These are predominantly single-loaded driveways with cars parked on one side. The building is central to the site. The landscaped area is shown in green as well. The applicant has asked certain decorative areas of the parking lot, those are stippled in red, also be included as part of the landscaping requirement. The applicant, as I mentioned, wishes to build a 6-story, 58-unit building. The lands are currently zoned I institutional, which doesn't permit an apartment building, and it limits the height of buildings to 3 stories. They've applied for an R5C zone with site-specific development standards. In reviewing this application, we took a look at the provincial growth plan, which encourages a mix of housing types within the community and for the intensification of land, and the municipalities are to identify areas with appropriate type and scale of development. And while this zoning would accommodate an intensified form of development and a mix of housing types in the area, we believe the scale of the development is not in keeping with the established or planned character of the area. We looked at the official plan as well. The lands are designated residential. They happen to be in an area where we would generally consider height and density increases. The official plan specifies that apartments between 4 and 6 stories up to a maximum density of 100 units a hectare, that's 40 units an acre, can be situated on arterial roads, the periphery of residential neighborhoods, close to shops and parks. Typically, the maximum height and densities would be achieved in ideal locations. The Dunn Street is classified as an arterial road. The site generally meets that locational criteria for higher densities. Once the road widening is taken, the density that we've calculated for this site is 102 units per hectare, which would exceed that allowed by the official plan. While it would also introduce a mix of land uses into the area, or the mix of land uses in the area, that is the college, the retirement homes, the apartment, commercial area, would allow for some increase in density. We don't believe this is a peripheral edge of a residential area. There are actually houses on both sides of Dunn Street. In fact, there's further residential development going on along Dunn. The proposed 6-story apartment building is not in keeping with the character of the area. Niagara College to the west is 1 story. Cavendish Manor is a 2-story building. There is a 4-story apartment building on the south side of Dunn Street, and that application was dealt with by this council previously, and as mentioned in the slide, the OMB determined that 4 stories was the appropriate height for that building in the neighborhood, and they required that there be a architectural roof to give the impression of a 3-story building with units in the attic level. Staff had supported a 5-story building on this site with provision that be underground parking, but the OMB ultimately decided that a low-end building was preferred. The abutting retirement homes to the east and to the north are 2 and 3 stories respectively. The zoning on the property I mentioned is institutional. The current height that's permitted is 10 meters or 32.8 feet, which we estimate is approximately a 3-story building. The R5C zone that has been requested permits a height of 19 meters, 62.3 feet, which is the equivalent of a 6-story building. The height is double that which is currently allowed in the area. A great deal of the area is already pre-zoned for R4, which permits townhouses and apartment development, but limits those heights to 12 meters or 39.3 feet. The R5C zone also has a requirement of 100 square meters per of lot area per unit. The applicant is proposing 97.82 square meters per unit, and therefore that equates to the 102 units per hectare that I mentioned earlier. That's twice the density that's actually permitted in the R4 zone, which I mentioned already is on the nearby lands. A reduction in 2 floors and an increase in the building footprint would allow some intensification while allowing the density in compliance with the official plan. As well, the R5C zone requires a minimum landscaped area of 40%, whereas the proposal has 30% landscaping. The applicant is proposing some colored concrete portion of the parking lot in compensate for loss of landscaping rather. We find that this is unacceptable because it really does not serve part of the resident amenity space. As well, the full landscaped air component would actually help reduce the visible mass of the building and help scale the building to the site. Site plan design has 2 driveways, as I mentioned at the outset. These have parking on only one side, so through further site design, we could actually achieve much greater efficiencies and achieve our 40% landscaping. The project would be subject to site plan control. It's a multiple family development in the city, and we would deal with the design details, including the driveway access, parking layout, landscape, fencing, lighting, etc. The conclusion, therefore, is while staff finds that multifamily residential use on the subject land can be supported, the height and density and landscaping provisions are not appropriate for the development because it's not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, the application is submitted cannot be recommended for approval, and we would encourage the applicant to redesign his development to bring it back for a future council meeting. Therefore, the recommendation is that council not approve the zoning amendment application for the site-specific R5. I think it's supposed to be C-zone to permit the 6-story apartment building at 102 units per hectare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. And once again, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 34, subsection 19 of the Planning Act. At this time, Council will hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment? Please come forward. Be kind enough, please, to state your name and address and just adhere to the 10-minute limit, please. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council members. I'm Sister Loretta Rollheiser. I reside at 5840 Dunn Street, the Pine Mansion 2, which has been in operation for the past 2 years. Since that apartment building has gone up, I think it has added to the enhancement of Dunn Street. I have never realized how busy Dunn Street is and how many of the tourists walk up and down Dunn Street from the hotels. And therefore, I think the city needs to take a look at Dunn Street and enhance as much as possible that end of Dunn Street so that the tourists and the attraction of the tourist district is enhanced by the people going back and forth. And also with the parking, hotel parking, off-site parking is there, so that also takes into effect. Pine Mansion 2, the new apartment building, is very, very well landscaped. And it is an apartment that enhances that area, which needs to be so done. The new apartment building that would be across the street, I cannot see why a 6-story building would block any type of visual aspect. I face that area, and I myself would not object to a 6-story building in that area. And if the people that would occupy that building would be as comfortable as we are in the apartment building that we occupy right now, I think we would all be very happy with that apartment building. I also have a letter here from another tenant that would have liked to be in here this evening but was not able to come, and I would like to read to you what she has to say. Last July 2008, our family moved from Sudbury, Ontario, and after a two-month search for suitable accommodation, we were very fortunate to find a vacancy at Pine Mansion 2, 5840 Dunn Street, Niagara Falls, Ontario. During our 2-month search, both in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, going through the newspapers and online, we were extremely discouraged until we happened to stumble upon our present apartment. All of a dozen apartments that we visited in Niagara region, Pine Mansion 2 was the only apartment building that showed it was built with quality, elegance, and pride of workmanship. The building has always been suburbly landscaped, and the interior has always been in spick and span condition. Pine Mansion 2 on Dunn Street definitely enhances the whole neighborhood, and therefore, building another quality apartment building across the street will definitely be a positive site for the entire area. I sincerely hope that you grant permission for another beautiful apartment complex to be erected across the street. Sincerely, Ted and Jenny Samilsky. I myself would encourage the council to take this into a very positive consideration to grant permission for this building to be erected in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submissions. Are there any questions, Sister? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak other than the applicant, please? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Damiano, and I live at 6682 Ailanthus Avenue in Niagara Falls. 2 doors down from their lovely apartment building, which, by the way, the landscape does look good this year. Much better than last year. Anyway, this lot, I really don't have any hesitations with it being turned residential, but I do have a couple concerns that I want to address to the council about. Our residents on Ailanthus Avenue have been asking the city to put a cap on density forever, at least the 15 years I've been living there. And we thought we had done that, but the density level that's being asked on this plan is sort of blowing the lid off that cap. I really want you to consider when you're looking at this application, this is not an existing building that someone wants to rezone residential and improve the neighborhood, and they need to get a zoning bylaw to fit their building. This is a vacant lot for new construction. They want to zone it residential, not a problem. But if they're going to ask for a residential zoning, they should have a plan that fits that residential zoning. Don't ask to build on a vacant lot to an R5C and then give you a plan that doesn't fit an R5C. If you have to reduce the maximum lot coverage by 3 square meters per unit on a 58-unit building, then the density is too high. If you have to reduce your landscape, your green space by 5% on a main artery to the tourism area where green space is very important, we want it to look good for our tourists who are walking up and down Dunn Street. We want the maximum green space there. Make your building a little smaller, cut down the number of units, fit it into an R5C, and you won't have any argument from us. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else like to speak? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak other than the proponent? Once again, for the third time, is there anyone else who'd like to speak other than the proponent? Failing that, then now at this time, council will hear from the applicant or his representative. Please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak to Mr. Mayor, members of council, senior staff. I'll speak to the project aesthetics, and Mr. Vac will speak to the amending bylaw.
Just for the record.
Emilio Raimondo, architect, Raimondo Associate Architects in Niagara Falls. If I might indulge staff to perhaps flip to the previous planning PowerPoint presentation, specifically the first slide, which is sort of the preface to the presentation. And I would just like council to note that, in fact, Mr. Herwick has noted that the present adjacent buildings are 3-story and a 2-story. Actually, the French residents to the north, consideration given to the roof pitches would probably put the overall development closer to 4. And Cavendish Manor, if you look at the, it's about a 10-12 pitch, plus the former belfry, actually puts the overall building height comparable to the 6-story or slightly thereafter. So what I also like to do, and indulge your pleasure, is if you can flip back to the site plan that was presented and perhaps leave that on the screen. Okay, perfect. And if I can, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hand out a handout to the members of council.
Mr. Clerk? Mr. Clerk? Sure. Mr. Clerk.
What you have before you is a tool that we often use in planning. It's called a figure ground plan. And when compared to the actual presentation, as you can see, the site plan to most of your left doesn't truly put the building in context, representational speaking, to its surrounding. And I think that's key and foremost because we're talking about compatibility here. And at times, compatibility is a term that can be used with a bit of interpretation. The figure ground map that you have before you actually puts the overall 6-story, 58-unit apartment building in its overall context, and the context being its relevant adjacencies. For example, the Maid of the Mist campus, as you can see, it lies to the west. It's roughly about 6 times the building footprint of what's proposed for this apartment dwelling, this rental apartment dwelling. The present institutional seniors apartment building, La Joie de Vivre, to the north, roughly occupies a similar footprint in size, in width, in overall length. Cavendish Manor to the east, again comparable to the proposed apartment, almost the same size and shape in terms of figure ground planning. What's also important about a figure ground plan is that it's very revealing in a sense that you can see that the apartment building, how it may affect its adjoining neighbors related to compatibility. We actually produce something in the neighborhood of 15 shadow studies for this building at various times a year. And I can vouch that I don't believe, and I think staff concurs, that not any one of those particular shadows affected any of the adjacent buildings. It also is very revealing that it gives the relationship to the street, Dunn Street, and the other properties that lie to the west of Dunn Street. For example, the 4-story apartment building, which is up for a Trillium Award this year. It's beautifully landscaped, beautifully kept up by our client, and some of the other smaller and mixed-use developments, the kind of commercial sector directly east of the development on Dunn Street. So I think in terms of context, this gives council a better appreciation of the impact this building has on its adjacent neighbors. The building was situated in a manner where it was central to the site for that very reason. And the reason was to minimize impact on its surrounding adjacencies. Most of the developments from face of building, proposed building, to the adjacent buildings are well over 100 feet. So with that said, that leaves a substantial buffeting effect between the building and its surrounding neighbors. Separation was meant purposefully to benefit the adjacencies, but also create functional access to the building on various sides. The quality of the construction is, I guess, a real testament is the building across the street, which is the 4-story. This building will be built of high-quality materials, longevity. I think one of the neighbors talked about enhancement of the neighborhood. I think that is the true wishes of the developer here, is to enhance the development and the neighborhood with a compatible use. In closing, I'd like to say that we wouldn't be here before you based on the proposal if we felt it weren't comfortably afforded on the site, that it would enhance the neighborhood, certainly through a need. There's a proven need for this type of housing on Dunn Street. And every so often, although you have various sectors of the community that you would like to propose, say, an R4C zone, from time to time you have these little anomalies that I would call kind of specific nodes. I think Mr. Vaca will get into that, is that when you look at a figure ground map and you look at the relationship of compatibility related to massing, scale, usage, that I think this plan really speaks for itself, that in fact that this building does fit the site, does not have any adverse impact on its surrounding neighbors. From a massing and scale perspective, it certainly far from competes with some of the larger buildings that lie to the west of it, certainly Niagara College and Cavendish Manor to the east. And I'll certainly welcome any questions and leave any further discussion for Mr. Vaca.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raimondo, I should say. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Raimondo? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm going to jump straight ahead to the PowerPoint presentation. You'll see that Terra Culinary has handed out a couple of documents, one of which is a colored map that I'm going to be referring you to many times. The map references in yellow the properties that are in support of the application. They've submitted written letters of support. The pink highlighting identifies those properties that were listed in the petition in opposition. Very briefly, the abutting adjacent properties to the west is Niagara College. They've submitted an email from Mr. Woodhouse dated June 29th in support of the application. To the north, we have La Residence Joie de Vivre retirement home, which has approximately 50 residents who reside at that retirement home. They've also submitted a letter of support dated July 17th. The final abutting property to the east is Cavendish Manor. You'll see that they've also submitted a letter of support from their administrator, Janice Amos, and they currently have 66 residents and a capacity for 89 residents in total. The important point is none of the adjacent properties are residential, they're institutional, and all are in support of the application. Now, dealing with the closest residences in the area. To the west, we have 5951 and 5959 Dunn Street, just on the other side of the Meet of the Mist Center. They've submitted a letter of support from the Chiquino and Gioviti families. These same families also own 3 residences to the south. The addresses are listed on the PowerPoint. As I've indicated earlier, the map, which I've handed out in pink, identifies the property owners who signed the petition in opposition who reside on that area on the map. It's important to note that the nearest single-family homes are not here objecting, those being from Level Avenue, Dixon Street, or Cleveland Street. Moving on to the official plan policies, some of which were referenced in the planning report and some of which were not. First of all, the policies support between 4 and 6 stories in height, up to a density of 100 units per hectare in the periphery of a residential area. Our proposal is 6 stories, so it's within the maximum limit. It has a density of 101 units per hectare if we include the road widening to be given, and is on the periphery. It's only 200 meters from commercial development. This policy was not referred to in the planning report. Section 4.4.3 and Figure 4 in the official plan permits a height of 13 to 30 stories across from single-family homes in the area north and south of Dunn Street and Cleveland Street, only 200 meters from the subject property. If you're not familiar with that property, that is the off-site parking lot for the Radisson and for the Marriott on Dunn Street. So 200 meters down the street, your OP contemplates 13 to 30 stories. Our proposal is 6 stories. Mr. Herlovich discussed gradation of height. I would suggest to you that there is the gradation of height in this circumstance where we have 13 to 30 stories, 200 meters down the road, contemplated in your official plan, and our proposal is 6 stories, 200 meters away. So our conclusion on the official plan policies, in our opinion, the proposal substantively complies with the OP. We're simply splitting hairs at 101 units or 102 units versus 100 units. In our opinion, this infill development is compatible with the area, as it does not abut residential properties. The properties are institutional. And as Mr. Raimondo has indicated, the proposal does include generous setbacks from all property lines. Dealing with the agency comments, there were no objections to the proposal raised by any city departments or the region, except the planning department's recommendation at 6 stories. As Mr. Raimondo indicated, at the request of planning staff, numerous shadow studies were completed, which did not raise any issues with the height. Your transportation department requested a traffic safety audit, which has been submitted to the city, which raises no issue with the 2-driveway design. The issue of traffic has been raised by some neighbors. What I've handed out to you is the comments of your transportation services department. You'll see some black highlighting on the page. Your department looked at it and determined that no traffic impact study was required. In their words, the use would not generate enough new traffic to require a study. That's your experts. Moving on to what I've classified as prior approvals and opinions. What we're looking at here is what has planning staff and council supported in the past in the area. First property, which you've heard much about, is our client's property across the street. And I've referenced 2 planning reports dealing with that property. In 2000, planning staff recommended and council approved in principle a rezoning for 5-story, 27-unit senior citizen home with a density of 150 units per hectare, abutting single-family homes to the rear and to the west. It did not abut institutional uses as we do in this case. Later that same year, planning staff recommended and council approved in principle an OPA and rezoning, once again for 5 stories, 27 units, with a density of 150 units per hectare, abutting single-family homes. The neighbors opposed the development. The OMB approved the development at 4 stories based upon minutes of settlement, and the matter did not proceed to a hearing. The OMB did not have a hearing on that matter. It was minutes of settlement that were signed between the developer and the city. Also important to note that the planning report and decision predates the provincial policies that Mr. Herlovich discussed this evening, which policies encourage greater intensification and density. The second property is property on Drummond Road near Dunn Street. There was a planning report on September 10th, 2007. Planning staff asked council to determine whether to continue with appeals to a minor variance decision to permit 5-story, 95-unit apartment building abutting single-family residential. Council decided not to continue with the appeal. That property abuts single-family residential and has substantially larger building footprint than the subject property. The final example, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, planning report dated June 8th, 2009, dealing with the Loretto property. Planning staff recommended and council approved an OPA to permit 3 buildings, up to 57, 42, and 32 stories respectively, which may include as many as 530 residential units. At 530 units, using the area of the whole site, 3 hectares, the density per acre is 176 units per hectare. If we apply only the area which will be occupied by the residential units, which is the proper calculation, the density would be well over 350 units per hectare of residential units. Moving on to economic impact, and I would submit to you that this is something that Council needs to take into consideration during these challenging times. The applicant will commence construction as soon as permits are available and will not lay off employees during the slow winter construction season. The construction period will be approximately 10 months and will involve over 120,000 labor hours. The estimated annual property tax revenue will be approximately $120,000. Development charges, bylaw that you approved this evening, that is the number. $315,520 in development charges will be paid to the city as a result of this project. Continuing on with economic impact considerations, these new rental housing units are in close proximity to the city's major employers, the Falls View Casino, Convention Center, hotels. There is a need for this type of rental housing. The applicant currently has a list of over 20 individuals who would like to move into the proposed building, and this is simply through word of mouth. So in summary, the planning department does not support more than 4 stories in height, even though in our opinion the OP policies are met and the development is compatible. But once again, the prior approvals and opinions that I went through this evening supported 5 stories across the street abutting single-family homes prior to new provincial policies promoting greater density and intensification. Also, the prior approval in 2007 supported 5 stories on Drummond Road abutting single-family homes. Finally, the 2009 OPA approval of the Loretto lands supported 3 buildings with density ranging from a low of 176 to over 350 units per hectare. I would submit to you that if 5 stories is supported next to single-family homes in the past, prior to the new provincial policies, then it would only seem logical that 6 stories in this case ought to be supported where we abut institutional uses. I believe it's important to mention once again that the official plan permits a height of 13 to 30 stories in an area that is only 200 meters from the subject property. Conclusion, we're requesting that Council approve the 6-story 58-unit proposal because of the following points. It meets the OP and provincial policies promoting greater density. It will not abut any residential properties. It is consistent with the prior approvals and opinions I presented to you this evening of Council and planning staff. It is supported by all of the abutting neighbors. It will provide new needed rental housing in the area. And finally, it will result in construction activity and significant development charges and property tax revenue. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members of Council, any questions of Mr. Vaca? Yes, Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question, thanks for the presentation, Mr. Baca. I didn't understand, or I hadn't heard this term before, OMB minutes of settlement versus a judgment, I guess, by the OMB. Maybe, Your Worship, we can get a little bit of clarification on what that means, and from our staff, possibly.
Thank you. Mr. Hurlovich? Mr. Beeman, that's fine.
Minutes of settlement are the record of an agreement to settle a dispute that's before a tribunal. And essentially what happens is you write down on paper what it is you're agreeing is going to take place. In the case of the OMB, those have to be approved by the OMB itself. So that you take them, you get the OMB to approve them. And that's usually what happens is we just have one page that says we agree to the bylaw to be amended in the form attached. And what's attached is the bylaw, which will set out the specifications that will be approved by the OMB.
So through your worship, the main difference between that and an actual hearing, what is the
It means that they didn't lead evidence, or at least they didn't get to the end of the evidence and force the OMB to actually resolve the dispute. It means that the parties got together and agreed on something that everybody could live with, and it was done. And it was resolved.
Parties came together.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a big difference. I didn't understand that, your worship. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Vaca? Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Vaca. Once again, then, the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded in the pleasure of council. Council, moved by Councillor Wing, seconded by Councillor Iannone, moving the recommendation. Any questions or comments? Having seen none, all those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. Thank you. The motion's carried. Thank you very much. Move the recommendation and deny the application.
Does everybody realize that?
Yeah. Clerk's asked me to clarify this. Does everybody realize that they?
We know what we moved.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
I ask if this was passed?
No. The recommendation was to deny the amendment. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
What's that?
Members of council, I'd like to begin this evening by offering our sincere condolences to Mr. Trent Dark, our Director of Human Resources. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Just begin. There's another public meeting. Is there anyone here with regard to the application AM 2009-009, a zoning bylaw amendment application at 6570 Frederica Street? With regard to an application, City of Niagara Falls to rezone for the sale of surplus owned city lands? No? Okay. Yes, Councillor Thompson?
Can I ask a question? We went through that very quickly, and everybody threw up their hand. There really wasn't, in fact, I thought we were talking about a 4-story recommendation for that site, but actually what we did is just turn down the application completely. I think it's a lot of people thought it was compatible with 4 stories, but I certainly didn't intend to deny the application outright, so I don't know whether everybody else felt the same way.
Well, the clerk asked the question, and you voted against it. They're all against except one. So the recommendation, Councillor Diodati, it's hard to go back to say what you were
Your
thinking.
worship, I was of the same, I don't know the way it came about. It happened so quick. I thought that we were voting on the on the proposal versus the recommendation. I was in the same boat, and I think that some other councillors felt the same way.
The clerk says, beg your pardon? The motion is quite simple. The motion is to deny the approval. So I don't know, what you're getting into as far as 4 stories or 6 stories.
That's not what the motion said. The motion said, it said move the recommendation. It didn't say deny the...
The recommendation is that council not approve the zoning bylaw amendment application to a site-specific residential apartment 5B density zone to permit a 6-story apartment building at 102 units.
I can read the recommendation as well as the clerk, but that's not what was verbally said to the council here. That's what I'm saying. Thus the confusion. And that's the way I saw it. And anyone else, feel free to speak up.
Okay. Well, we asked for the pleasure of council, and I asked, and then Councillor Wing, excuse me, please. Councillor Wing moved the recommendation, which was to deny the application. It was seconded. I asked for those in favor, and we had 7 opposed, 7 in favor, and 1 opposed. So now we have a question. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I still think, and I'm expressing my opinion, I thought there was, we were talking about at least the recommendation of the planner for 4 stories at least, and further dialogue and discussion, but the motion to deny, we sat through this whole hearing for nothing, just to deny an application. Even the planning staff recommended it's appropriate for 4 stories. I think there was too much confusion involved in this, and certainly I wouldn't have voted to deny the application, that's for sure.
Mr. Clerk?
Well, the application is for 6 stories, 102 units per hectare. I think the developers obviously have got the signal of what council's intent is, which is for the 4 stories as recommended by planning. So the developer will have to make a decision whether to resubmit their application with that in mind.
Councillor Wing.
It's pretty clear. We all had it in front of us what the recommendation I was moving was. I just like to quote page 4 of the planning report, which is the proposal is an overdevelopment of the site. Through the preliminary consultation process, staff examined with the owners and their architect various options which would allow an increase in density, etc., to achieve design in keeping with the area. These were not accepted by the applicant. Now, the design they want has not been accepted by the council. So basically what we're saying is no. As per the staff recommendation, we are not approving the 6-story apartment at 102 units per acre. Ball is back in their court to decide what to do, and of course they can always continue to meet with staff and perhaps now be a little more amenable to accepting the recommendations of staff to bring this into keeping with the character of the rest of the area.
I was just asking the clerk, members of council, we were asking the question if there's any further questions of the applicant. There was nothing raised about what if you didn't get 6 or whatever. There's nothing raised by council, so I don't know what you're thinking. I asked you to make a comment. There was no questions raised. The clerk's saying you could present a motion of reconsideration, but we voted. There was 7 for the recommendation to deny and 1 opposed. So the pleasure of council again.
Does the applicant have any, under the circumstances, any suggestions with respect to a compromise?
Councillor Iannone?
We voted on this.
That's right.
The residents left. So if you were looking at us to amend it to 4 stories, 4 stories isn't the application in front of us. We've had it drilled in our head 100 times. If it's not in the application in front of you, we can't on the fly negotiate with the developer standing here.
Yes, you can.
So they're gone. The residents have left believing that our vote was valid. I can't imagine us going back and changing it now.
I can't disagree with that. The motion was clear. Councillor Diodati.
Well, Your Worship, we maybe got a little bit misdirected here, and so I guess we're just going to have to resubmit their application with some other terms. That's all we can do at this point.
Try 7 stories.
Yeah. Well, Council, it was clear on the recommendation what the recommendation said, and it was a clear motion by Councillor Wing and seconded by Councillor Iannone. We did ask the question and asked you to raise your hands, and we had, as I said once again, 7 supporting the recommendation to deny and 1 opposing it.
I know how you feel, Janice. 7 to 1.
Okay, Mr. Clerk.
Next item.
Yeah. So I guess the matter is very clear that hopefully the applicant could come back and present a further application to staff and to our council's consideration in the future. A new process again, unfortunately. Okay. Council's dealt with it. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Clerk, next item then, please. We do have members of the gallery who are interested in observing the application with regard to the 6570 Frederica Street.
Yeah.
A public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw to rezone for sale surplus city-owned lands at 6570 Frederica Street. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, June 19th, 2009, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
And once again, I'm going to ask the Director of Planning to explain the purpose and the reason for the bylaw amendment application. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application involves not only the rezoning of the Stamford Jack Bell Arena, but it also includes another housekeeping matter, and that is the removal of the retail market study requirement as part of our official plan, because these are 2 municipal initiated applications, we've combined them into one report for the purposes of housekeeping. The primary part of the report, though, does involve the arena site, Jack Bell and Stamford Arenas on Frederica Street as one parcel, and the second parcel is the parking lot on the north side of Frederica Street. The property on the north is actually already designated residential, and the property on the south is designated in the official plan as open space. Again, this aerial photograph actually shows the area of the parking lot on the north side, the two arenas on the south side of Frederica Street, and it shows the Prince Edward Park on the southwest corner, which would be retained by the city as a neighborhood park to serve the area. I'm going to skip this. Anyway, in looking at the application, we had regard for the fact that the application is designated residential, that the growth plan for the province actually encourages intensification. The parcel on the north is designated open or residential in the official plan. The south part is designated open space. By redesignating the surplus lands of the arena site, the same residential designation, we're actually providing the opportunity for the neighborhood to have further residential development. The OP encourages compatible infill development, such as what will take place on these lands, contribute to the housing supply and the efficient use of municipal services. The zoning on the land, the proposed zoning for the lands, that is the Stamford Jack Bell Arena site, we're proposing that actually be an R2 zone. It permits either detached dwellings or semi-detached dwellings, depending on the lot frontage that would be created for each of the lots. By our estimate, we believe that there could be approximately 20 residential lots achieved, and as I said, they could accommodate either detached or semi-detached units. On the north parcel, which is already designated residential, we're recommending a mixed zone, an R2 and an R4. Again, this depends on what might be physically accommodated there. Because it's next to the provincial highway, we do believe there's some chance or an opportunity for some increased density. As an R4 site, based on the lot area, it would accommodate 15 apartment units. If it was to develop with singles, 7 singles, or 5 semi-detached lots, which would result in 10 units. So basically between 7 and 15 units on the north parcel, and it will depend on the setbacks as to what can be accommodated. The region has requested that there be an environmental site assessment for phase 1 on the arena site due to the nature of the arena and the type of equipment and chemicals that might be used there, and that would be a condition of the zoning, and so it would be an H zone on the arena site. As well, the city had regard to the heritage value. We did note that the two arenas do have associative value to the community. Stamford Memorial is named in recognition of the soldiers who served during World Wars I and II. Was built in 1949. Stamford Jack Bell, named after a local resident for his work in hockey and figure skating, was built in 1973. It's recommended that both buildings be documented in a photographic record before the buildings would be demolished. The city is proposing, so that's the first application, or first aspect. The second aspect is to remove the official plan requirement for market studies as they're required now for any new or significant expansion of commercial areas, any expansion of floor area beyond the zoning bylaw, any increase in neighborhood commercial, and so on. Staff in reviewing this, we've discussed this with staff in the past, or council in the past. We have amended the official plan 7 times to accommodate new commercial development. We believe the retail sector is self-regulating and will not build more space than can physically be absorbed. We conducted a sampling of other municipalities, found that the policies range from discretionary policies requiring studies to not requiring studies. Therefore, there's a broad range of policies across the province. I would point out there is a letter of objection from the region in your package to this policy that we would remove the requirement for market studies. And we are recommending that we proceed with Council's direction to eliminate the requirement for market studies. Therefore, two conclusions here. One is that the amendments for the Frederica Street properties be approved, that they comply with the official plan, they comply with the provincial growth policies, plan rather, that the land use changes will facilitate future residential development, and that this is surplus residential land. There will be a holding provision relative to the environmental aspects and noise for the noise study be conducted before the buildings go up. And then the second aspect is the citywide official plan amendment be adopted to remove the requirement for market studies. And that is the recommendation of staff, this council.
Okay, thank you. Once again, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 34, subsection 19 of the Planning Act. I have a comment or question from Councillor Peter Angelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess what I'm wondering is just for the resident, or just for the benefit of the residents that are here, whether or not Schedule 2 can be brought up on the screen so that the residents can actually see the hatched-out plan that staff is proposing. And also, I wanted to highlight the fact that the park that's there right now would not be going anywhere.
That's right.
So I would imagine that would be a question coming up.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Now, once again, Council, we hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone present?
Can we get Schedule 2 up there? No.
I'm sorry?
Can we get Schedule 2 up there? No, we don't have it.
Schedule 2.
Schedule 2 is the one that shows the actual drawing of the lots. No.
You got it in your plan?
No, I don't have it.
Yeah, it's not in the slide, unfortunately. It's in the book. Is there anyone present who'd like to speak to this matter other than the application from the City of Niagara Falls? Once again, for the third time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to this matter? Having seen none, we have heard from the City. The pleasure of Council, we have comments. Actually, we can't do that yet. We'll close the meeting. If we're going to. Is there any comments from staff? I'm sorry, from Council of staff? Okay. Seeing none, then the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. And in the pleasure of Council, Councillor Thompson, are you moving the recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Fisher. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Everybody understand what we're talking about?
Well, one question, Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor Peter Angelo.
Your Worship, I mean, the city always tries to sell land with its highest and best use.
Right.
I guess my only question would be, would this be the highest and best use of the land?
Until somebody comes in and requests a change, I guess that's the question, isn't it? I have a concern as well. So we do have a motion on the floor, and the question you ask is now, is this the highest and best use? And it would allow then for singles and semi-detached dwellings to be built. It would not allow for a condominium townhome project to be built. Councillor? Yes.
Would it be the city's responsibility then to extend Byng Avenue?
To extend Byng Avenue to where?
Correct, to Frederica, north of Frederica.
I don't think so. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to that? Would that be a planning or engineering matter? Mr. Beeman?
I think that, Councillor, the lot configuration that's shown on Schedule 2 is there'd be no reason at all for the city to follow that in developing the lands in the future. That's just what exists, but there'd be no planning rationale really, given the way the property's developed, to actually follow this particular plotting plan. So what's there would not be, in all likelihood, the way it's going to develop. So, in other words, Big Avenue can be considered to be not there if that's not to the best advantage to develop the land. It would be closed and stopped up or whatever else needs to be done in order to achieve that end. In fact, seeing as the arena's on it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's already closed.
Councillor, does that answer your question?
It does, Your Worship. It's just a Schedule 2 that we're being shown. 13 of the 21 lots are fronting on an extension of Bing Avenue, so it just kind of makes me wonder why this plan would have been drawn up if Bing Avenue isn't going to be extended.
Mr. Hurlovich, could you address that, please, as a planner?
The plan that Councillor Peter Angelo is referring to is the original registered plan for the area. At this point, we did examine as staff the possibility of extending Bing Avenue through, but as you can see, at least a half of the block of the new street would be actually fronting onto the parkland. So in actual fact, you wouldn't achieve any lots in that location. So it would be quite an expensive street to build. We really felt that there would be an advantage to the purchaser to explore developing this as one block, either by severing off some lots, perhaps at the corner of Prince Edward and Frederica, retaining the larger block and perhaps getting rezoning. The thing that planning staff, in consultation with Parks and Recreation staff, was that we did want to dispose of the lands. We didn't have a plan for an apartment building or a townhouse complex, and so therefore we wouldn't have been able to bring forward a large building to show how the site might or might not be able to be developed, how far those might be from the residential lots, shadowing effects. So without a site-specific plan, as we require from private developers, we really felt that we had to come forward with a residential zone that was the same as those on the block. We dealt with it slightly differently on the north property, largely because of the proximity to the highway and having to address some noise concerns, and felt that there was some opportunity there for an apartment building because it, A, was a smaller building, and B, backed onto the highway, and therefore the impacts were quite a bit different. So we recommended the mixed zone on the north property, but straight R2. But there was no substantive advantage to extend things through.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, through you to Mr. Hurlovich again. Did you take into consideration in your discussion and debate on this what potential for the highest and best use would be for the property? Was that part of your discussion and debate? Although we don't approve apartments, but I wondered what was your discussions with respect to this?
I guess the one thing that we wanted to do was make sure it was a saleable piece of property. We also, again, because the municipality didn't have a design for the building, we didn't know what the public interest was going to be. We felt if there was a lot of public opposition to a multifamily development, we would not be able to explain the type or nature of the building that would be going on there. So without that, we were trying to avoid public controversy, given that we are the municipality.
So the developer could come in and ask for rezoning anyway with respect to is the property sold as is? They're responsible for demolition and cleanup of the site?
I think the solicitor could speak to that, but I believe that is the plan.
Mr. Bean?
Yes, the intention is, members of council, to sell the property as is, with the developer absorbing the cost of demolition and environmental cleanup.
And once again, members of council, I think we're trying to achieve the maximum yield for the taxpayer in respect to the value of the property, and those properties have to be demolished either way, but if they come back and use that as an excuse to say, well, we'd like even a greater density than what we're approving, then we may be shortchanging the benefit of the taxpayer, the yield to the taxpayer. So that same argument could be used to saying we're going to have to tear the building down, so we want to step up the zoning and intensify the zoning. So it depends upon the pleasure of council here as to what we proceed with. Right now we have a motion on the floor. Yes, Mr. Hurlovich.
Your Worship, I would suggest that council intends to zone the Jack Bell Stamford Arena anything other than the R2, we would have to re-advertise because the notice that went out to the public was for an R2 zone for that property. It was only the north property that we recommended the R2, R4 mix, and the notice went out that way.
Well, we don't have much opposition here, and any opposition at this point, so we are talking about the two lands, one being a little different on the other side of Frederica than on the Cook Street or the Frederica side of the property. We have a motion on the floor. In the pleasure of council again. Councillor Peter Angelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, I mean, I think we should be going for the highest and best use of the lands.
I agree.
I mean, I could see a developer coming back to us and telling that an R2 won't be feasible for him. I'd like to see it go back to planning staff personally and see if they can come up with something else, to be honest with you.
Well, I think if the mover and seconder agree, we do have the property on the north side that Mr. Ehrlich just spoke about. And are you talking about the south side then? South side, yes. Okay. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Well, we just went through a situation with an apartment, 4 stories, and we didn't approve that. So I think this is just going to complicate the situation. As soon as you advertise it again, it's going to be apartments or high-rise or whatever. You got all surrounded by residential, an old established neighborhood. I think you're just asking for trouble, in my opinion.
Motion on the floor?
Yeah, Councillor Peter Angelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, condominium complexes, I mean, especially the single-story condominium complexes are a very nice addition to a neighborhood. It doesn't have to be an apartment building. I can't imagine that an apartment building would be wanted in that area. But I would imagine that a nice little quaint condominium complex would be very nice. And it would probably be a better addition to the area rather than an R2 zone, which is duplexes.
It certainly would maybe fit the plan a little better if you didn't have to worry about on-street and you had a proposed development project that would be a planned development project as opposed to singles and semis.
Your Worship, if I can just make another comment, I mean, as many times as we've fought condominium complexes or had residents come down and fight the inclusion of condominium complexes in their neighborhood, I've never talked to a resident afterwards that has been disappointed with what's been built. So, I mean, I think they're a good inclusion into an area. I was never talking about an apartment building.
Certainly can't disagree with that. So, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, but when you talk condominium, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about apartment-type condos? You're talking townhouses? What are you talking about? Totally different things.
Councillor Peter Angelo?
Single story, Your Worship. Single story.
Or you're talking about like single and 2-story, bungalow and 2 stories? Yes. Well, we have a motion on the floor for approval of the application as it sits. You can support it or reject it, but Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, well, we don't have a choice. The planner just told us you either approve what has been advertised or defer it or deny it and bring something else in.
That's right.
Well, then, Your Worship, I'll make a motion to defer.
Well, okay. We have a motion to defer, seconded by Councillor Diodati. It's undebatable. Before you, Council understands the motion to defer before us. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. The motion to defer is allowed. Now the direction to staff. We want to defer till. Do you want some direction, please?
Yeah, I'd like an opinion from staff, Your Worship, whether or not there is a higher and best use for it.
Okay, so the deferral until we can get an opinion from staff for a higher and better use. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yep, I would suggest that we're going to do that rather than get into a whole mess here. We have a public meeting, notify the people in the area that it's going to be sold and get input into what they'd like to see happen. You might be surprised at what they have to say, but rather than going through another debate and a discussion, you've got the facility right there. You could have an area residents meeting, tell them what you're doing. Nothing wrong with openness, transparency, and accountability, and we can look good by doing that.
Will you make that a motion, please?
Yes, please.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maves. Once again, you've got that motion. We'll have a public meeting where we can engage the public and ask for their input. Okay, all those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, does staff have that clear, Mr. Hurlovich? Is that understandable then? Thank you very much. Once again, I'll begin with my comments. I'd like to begin the evening by offering our sincere condolences to Mr. Trent Dark, our Director of Human Resources, on the passing of his father-in-law, Mr. Gennaro Palladino. I was also pleased to attend several important events in our community and wish to report that on Friday last week, I was pleased to be invited to attend the graduation ceremony for our new firefighters. Fire Services has added 8 new recruits to their complement. We extend our sincere congratulations to these young men for their successful graduation. This past weekend's music festival organized by Celebrate Old Downtown was very popular, and if the numbers of cars and people downtown this weekend was any indication, then they can add this event as another successful event for the downtown of Niagara Falls. Go service in Niagara Falls continues to be a positive addition to the city, and for the 9 dates of operation so far, 9 days has taken place, there have been a total ridership of over 12,219 people. 6,577 from Toronto to Niagara Falls, 5,642 from Niagara Falls to Toronto, and 389 bicycles have also been carried. I'd also like to congratulate the Niagara Parks Commission and their many partners, the Niagara Falls Tourism, OTMP, Niagara Falls BIAs, and Go Transit for the recent unveiling of this new destination marketing piece, highlighting the affordable staycation packages. Over 500,000 copies have been printed for distribution, primarily in the GTA. Go has provided distribution stands in 20 of their key stations for these brochures, and as a further promotion of Niagara Falls, every Thursday, local Niagara Falls tourism businesses send staff to Union Station to Toronto to personally hand out the brochures. As well, as you know, the Communities in Bloom judges, Mr. Dennis Flanagan and Mrs. Lee Roson, will be in Niagara Falls beginning tomorrow through to July 23rd. And during their visit, we will be judged on many levels, including our beautification efforts, our environmental initiatives, and our community involvement. This is our inaugural entrance into the Communities in Bloom provincial competition. I'd like to thank all those homeowners and business owners, large and small, for their interest in improving the appearance of their properties. From downtown core to Lundy's Lane and back again, I've seen so many work crews addressing the appearance of so many properties, and there has been an overwhelming assistance by sponsors, volunteers, and supporters, and a very busy schedule awaits our judges when they arrive in Niagara Falls tomorrow. I have also been asked to remind everyone that the first deadline for the Bob Gale Recreation Fund is fast approaching on Friday, July 31st. You remember that this fund provides financial assistance for individuals of all ages from Niagara Falls who, due to financial constraints, are unable to participate in active and healthy lifestyle pursuits. Startup funding for this program, a commitment of over $100,000 over 3 years, was provided through the generosity of local hoteliers and the Sleep Cheap Charities Committee, along with Councillor Jim Diodati, who worked on that committee. Application forms are available online at bobgalerecreationfund.com. So once again, online applications are available at bobgalerecreationfund.com. Finally, while we're speaking of generosity, I would like to share with you the contents of a letter we received from the Christian Children's Fund of Canada, wherein they advised us that the City of Niagara Falls is one of the top 20 most generous cities in Canada with respect to supporting the Christian Children's Fund of Canada in lifetime giving. Over the years, the citizens of this city have contributed $633,034 to help the Christian Children's Fund of Canada in lifetime giving, helping impoverished children, families, and communities around the world. And once again, this concludes my remarks for this evening. Mr. Clerk?
I see Mr. Hurlovich has his hand up, and I think what he's going to be asking is there were 2 parts of their recommendation related to that last planning item, one which was related to obviously the surplus lands, and the one that had nothing to do with the surplus lands, which was related to the official plan or the amendments to take out the requirement of retail business studies. So I think staff would probably like that direction. I assume that your motion had nothing to do with the requirement of the market studies, and I would suggest that you make a motion to that effect.
Okay.
I would include that in the motion.
Okay, so we have I'd like to present a motion that
you approve that, but defer the other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that we have then a further request that Council approve the official plan amendment application to remove the requirement for submission of retail market studies. Have a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. So, staff, appreciate that, Mr. Clerk, for clarifying that issue. Thank you. Move on to communications and comments of the City Clerk. The first item is the Global Public Affairs representing Ontario Power Authority. They're requesting August 14, 2009 be proclaimed as Count Me In Community Challenge in the City of Niagara Falls. Moved by Councillor Iononi, seconded by Councillor Peter Angelo. Once again, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Wing.
Perhaps we should talk a little bit about what we just approved. If I could just read for a few excerpts from the letter. Count Me In Community Challenge Day is going to be August 14th, and that is the anniversary of the North American blackout that took place in 2003. You can, by pledging and participating on this day, you can prove the power of individual initiatives on the province's overall conservation goals. Cities and towns, and of course now we just agreed to be in the competition. It's one of those friendly competitions like Communities in Bloom. Cities and towns will compete for 2 awards, the highest percentage drop in electricity consumption on August 14th and the highest per capita participation in the Count Me In pledge. To take the pledge, you go to countmeinontario.ca. I was all rolled together, countmeinontario.ca. The highest per capita participation will be measured by the total number of online pledges over the community's population as of the most recent census. So basically, we need everybody watching and everybody they talk to count themselves in, to go to this website and take the pledge. And in doing so, they have the chance not only to boost our community's chances of being a winner, but to also themselves personally win one of the 3 grand prizes. The first prize is a suite of appliances, refrigerator, built-in dishwasher, washer and dryer. Second prize is a 42-inch flat panel high-definition TV. And the third prize is a Hewlett-Packard 16-inch laptop. And that's just for taking the pledge and participating on this anniversary of the blackout. So once again, it's countmeinontario.ca.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the qualification. Hopefully our citizens will engage themselves in the promotion, and certainly we'll try to promote this further. So we do have that information available to the public. Thank you very much. And Mr. Clerk, we do have an additional communication item. I believe it's an application for approval or to permit the discharge of fireworks. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. Fire has no concerns with this. Unfortunately, the way our bylaw is drafted, if there's a fireworks display outside of the traditional Canada Day, Victoria Day holidays, it requires council approval. But like I said, fire has no concerns with what's proposed.
So we do have an application to allow a fireworks display on Sunday, August 2nd, 2009, at the location of the White Wedding Chapel at Niagara Square Drive. That will be taking place during the day, I believe from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. So there's a request here you have as an addition to council. Pleasure of council. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Iononi. Any discussion? Councillor Carrio.
Just a question, Your Worship. Do we have adequate insurance?
Through you, I guess, to staff. Mr. Clerk?
As I think my memo sets out, this isn't a fireworks display on par with the Parks Commission or the recent ones that were at the Great Wolf Lodge. This is really no different than what you would do on Victoria Day in your backyard, basically. And the applicants have been advised of safe procedure as far as using those fireworks.
Okay. Answer your question? So there's no insurance, but I believe it's going to be on private property. Okay. So we have a motion before us, members of council. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any opposed? 1. Thank you. Are you in a conflict or are you opposing? Opposed?
I either have a conflict or I'm opposed.
Okay.
I'll declare a conflict since it's insurance.
No, there's no insurance.
There's no insurance, so. Okay, so we have 1 opposed. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Under legal matters, we have another matter of property being declared surplus to sell city-owned land abutting 6701 Bellevue Street. The number is L2009-29, the report number. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Cario. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Move on to ratification of Corporate Service Committee actions. I'm going to call on Councillor Peter Angelo as chair, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. At the Corporate Services Committee, prior to this one, the following items are to be ratified. First, that the minutes of the April 6th meeting be adopted as recorded. Under communications, that the city adhere to its swimming pool fence bylaw and thereby deny the request for an exemption to the bylaw. Under deputations, it's recommended that the best efforts agreement between the city and Andre Kopinski be pulled from the bylaw section of the council agenda. Under reports, Your Worship, we had L 2009-33 dealing with the application of section 99.1, and it was recommended that council defer any decision on considering a bylaw under this section of the Municipal Act to allow staff to do further research and allow the solicitor for the residents to prepare a submission, and that staff be directed to assist parties to investigate alternative solutions. The last report, Your Worship, was CAO 2009-01, process related to the early retirement incentive option, and it was recommended that the report be deferred to the council agenda that we're in now. And that was it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask for a motion, first of all, to approve. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move on to the next item, the CAO 2009-01, report by our CAO with regard to the process related to the early retirement incentive option. Mr. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the June 29th meeting, Council had asked that staff report back on the process related to the early retirement incentive option. We heard legal advice that night in camera dealing with some of the issues related to this matter, but tonight we're here publicly to talk about some of the issues related to process. And Council recall back in February of 2007, Council received a report from Delta Consulting respecting some changes to the organizational structure, which called for the filling of certain positions and some staff changes. And staff had recommended at the time, in order to fill those positions without creating additional staff complement, that there were some measures that were going to be undertaken, and those included an OMERS early retirement plan, incentives, and that was the early volunteer option plan, internal repositioning, phasing in of some of the positions, and utilization of other funds in the budget related to the people mover. There was a report that was presented to Council on March the 19th, which outlined the program, but that program really didn't in detail outline what the components of that early retirement option were, and tonight I can publicly state what those were. The program entailed anybody that was near 55 years of age to be in a position to retire early. And you must be in a non-union position. It was only applicable to non-union personnel. You had to have worked for the city for 10 years, and you were to commence early retirement no later than September 1st. If you met those qualifications, you were entitled to up to 2 weeks' pay for each year of service, up to a maximum of 26 weeks. So for a senior person that met that criteria, you could have maxed out taking an early retirement option by gaining 6 months' salary. The other part of the motion that Council asked us to address was what was the success or the outcome of that program. And, Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to report that, as outlined in the report, that the program entailed 8 people from that non-union group that participated in it, in the actual program. Those requests were treated on a confidential basis, and the municipality entered into confidentiality agreements with those individuals. So those names were not made public, and as discussed last week in camera, those names are not to be made public. I can tell you, though, that there were 8 people that participated in that program, and the results of the program gained a savings of approximately $216,000. On a go-forward basis, going into 2010, there will be 3 less positions that will be filled, and that's going to gain an annual savings of approximately $340,000 a year. That includes wages and all wages and all benefits and pension benefits that are calculated in that total. So there is a savings for the corporation as a result of that program, and we would argue that the program was a success based on those numbers. Now, we did come back with a number of staff recommendations, and throughout our investigation of the process, we did find that there were some administrative matters that could have been handled in a better way. Those are outlined in the report for you. I'll just briefly highlight those, Mr. Mayor, because it is getting late. But those entail what we feel should be some better in-camera reporting procedures. As outlined in the report, we felt that there could have been better disclosure and better recording of records in camera. Also, there are situations where the city clerk, due to personnel matters, is not in attendance, and we need to firm up our process with respect to how those minutes are kept and recorded. We suggest here that any similar retirement program, that we come forward with the details of the program criteria, which, as I said, probably was not done in great detail to council. We're suggesting on a go-forward basis that happen. And we're also suggesting that any time that there's an advisory committee to council, that the recommendations do come forward to council for ratification. There was some concern that through the process that there was 2 extensions to the program that were not reported to council. They were reported to the Human Resources Committee, but there was no formal ratification of those extension dates coming forward to council. We're suggesting that in the future that be tightened up and that any of those recommendations be presented to council for ratification. The other recommendation we're making here is that we feel that all human resource matters should be dealt with directly by corporate services. I know about a year ago that there was a Human Resource Committee set up. We really believe that Human Resource Committee should stay intact, but act as an ad hoc, on an ad hoc basis only. And I'll use a suggestion. They could be getting together for such things as the CAO's performance review and meeting on an ad hoc basis. But we feel that day-to-day HR matters should simply come through the Corporate Services Committee. For example, we had an item there tonight, Corporate Services, and we felt that was dealt with quite appropriately by the committee. So, Mr. Mayor, those are our recommendations, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, members of council. Councillor Iononi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. Todd. I think it's an awesome report, and I emailed you and let you know, and I thought it was, for the most part, thoroughly correct. I just want to say it only took 27 months and a new CAO to provide me with the information I asked for in camera in February 2007. That's a good record for us. So I want to follow a timeline here, and I want the residents to understand. For my own reputation as a councillor, I'm pretty sure it's out there that I call it like it is. Mr. Mayor, I remember at the beginning of your term, you asked me to call a spade, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to stay on the mindset of Councillor Diodati's prayer. I'm sure all of you won't be happy, but I'm going to be honest and frank anyway. And I want to talk about the motion of March 19th. Mr. Todd, in his report, highlights that the early retirement incentive option was based on a motion that was passed on March 19th. And Mr. Todd wasn't here, so I have to say he did a very good report in the absence of him not being our CAO at the time. And I want to remind Council why we're here. We're here because the Niagara Falls Review ran an article, a public article, that stated our former CAO received an early retirement bonus package from the city. I called the Review and I asked Mr. LaRocque, where did you get that information? Because we did not issue one. He said he got it from our staff. I asked that following council meeting for a report back from council, and my question to you, Mr. Mayor, was to tell me how it happened and can we get the money back. My question was based on process. I'm going to cover process here. I'm going to say that I didn't, and made it very clear in the last in-camera meeting, like the fact that we dealt with it downstairs. I don't think it belonged in camera, and that's where my one and only disagreement with Mr. Todd is. In Mr. Todd's second page, I'm sorry, the names confused me. When you walk through recommendation 1 to 6, it leads you to page 2, and the top paragraph in page 2 was, this report followed up through an in-camera discussion with council and the CAO on February 26 to discuss the staffing implications. The recommended changes included promotion and changes in organizational design. While the reorganization was not intended to increase the staff complement, the related staffing changes would increase the salary and labor costs by filling in some of the vacated positions and promoting staff into higher salary ranges. To offset these changes and save money, staff proposed to accomplish these changes by a series of measures, including, and Mr. Todd highlighted them in his summation here, and the first one is OMER's early retirement incentive options. I understand what OMER's early incentive retirement options is. We all get our OMER's package update to us regularly in the mail. And if I understood it then, and it was confirmed by staff today, that's your 85 and 90 factor. The early retirement incentive bonus was a separate and aside that the 8 staff that retired from here received. And it was given without authority of this council. We had an in-camera report where the lawyer we hired told us time and time again it was based on the motion to pass the Mercer Delta report on March 19th. So we were sitting through this meeting, the last council meeting, and I turned to our solicitor and I said, oh, by the way, did we provide Mr. Richardson with the Mercer Delta report? Because that motion was dragged into our head downstairs. And he said, no, we didn't. So Mr. Richardson provides us with a summation based on a motion this council made that we approved the Mercer Delta report. So I had Dean email me the Mercer Delta report because mine is covered in my own comments. Nowhere, just so council's clear, in your Mercer Delta report does it authorize, mention, or say we are going to pay with tax dollars an incentive early retirement package. How do I know this? Because the motion that Mr. Richardson highlights we passed, I made. I made the motion to pass the Mercer Delta report based on OMER's early retirement incentive options and the other 3 bullets, understanding what they were. The mayor seconded my motion. There was no mention, by the way, of taxpayer-supported early retirement bonus. As a matter of fact, I've asked 4 times, and 4 times been told in writing and verbally that there is no motion. Let's be clear, and I want the residents to understand this. There was no motion by this council to provide an early incentive bonus retirement package to anybody. And absent handing me a motion, I don't see where the authorization came from this council to do it. So I want the residents to understand that at no point did I participate, I'm only speaking for myself, did I participate in supporting a motion that would pay staff who are eligible to retire tax dollars to do so. I know what we passed. And when we talk about open, transparent, and accountable, I think Janice made the comment downstairs that we don't do public business in private. And I think my anger, and I have to write a note to myself here to say go slow, because I get so angry to think that my vote was taken away from me. Had you put a motion in front of this council that we had to vote on and ratify to pay eligible employees tax dollars to retire, I would strongly suggest that I don't believe it would have passed. Not only that, I believe the community would have had an outroar. But I will say this, we agreed on one thing downstairs, and that was there was not a snowball's chance in hell did any of you believe that I would have voted for that early retirement incentive option. And I want the residents to know that I didn't do it. And I also want to issue an apology to staff, because we made a motion to freeze the senior staff's wages here. And it's a great PR move for council. The mayor didn't speak to any of us before he brought it forward. I understand in a discussion, well, he didn't speak to me, so I don't know who else he spoke to. I asked staff today, did you get a pre-warning? They got a notion maybe it was coming. That was it. We passed it because we were looking to tell the residents we're going to save you money by freezing senior staff and council's wages. But in the same hand, we have a CAO creating payouts of $79,000 from public money, and we look like the good guys because we're standing here saying we froze staff's wages, I think it makes us look terrible to staff. And I say that with all due respect to them, because we froze their wages while we paid people huge sums of money in golden handshakes to leave. That doesn't make us great. That makes us stupid. Mr. Mayor, you asked me in camera downstairs a couple weeks ago, why is this topic coming up now, 2 years later? When you read Mr. Todd's report, you understand there's no possible way until the Review printed that article that we would have known that that package had been offered, accepted, and paid out. There's no motion, there's no ratification, there's nothing. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't misconstrue this to council. And I called OMERS today, and I asked OMERS, explain to me your early retirement incentive package, just as the motion that I moved and passed. They said it is your 85 and 90 factor. It's what you pay into. If you're eligible, you can take the OMERS payout. It did not include, Mr. Mayor, the payout that we handed 8 members of our staff. And you know what? I don't have any problem with the HR committee. I don't have any problem with any staff sitting here. I have a problem with the residents believing that this council knowingly voted to give out golden handshakes, because we did not. And I want to say something else. In early 2007, we started discussing downstairs the effects of a recession. The United States had already declared a recession. We were starting to see it, and I know because that's when Garner-Grassy Brook conversation started. I've pulled all my notes. It doesn't matter what you think you passed. It's what I know my motion to be. And our motion did not include almost $400,000 in payouts. And I call them a golden handshake. And never, ever in a recession do I think that was money well spent. And I will say, we had to replace a CAO. We didn't save any money on the CAO leaving. So there was no, you can put cost savings in here, that's a great red herring to me. If you say we saved $300,000, I say we could have saved $700,000 by not paying people out. And I just want you to clearly understand my position. You took my vote. We weren't allowed to put our position forward. We weren't allowed, the residents weren't allowed to understand what we were doing. We spent $400,000 of their money, and they didn't know it, and we didn't know it. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
That $400,000 is money we would have all dearly have loved to had available still this last budget. And you know, the reason we found out about this, as Councillor Iannone mentioned, was a newspaper article talking about the former CAO getting this money. He established an interest when he put in a letter indicating his intent to participate in this program, which council never, ever, ever approved. So we have a non-existent program and a man putting in a letter of intent to participate in it, an intent which he never subsequently declared. That's wrong. You know, he was making recommendations to the HR committee about a program which, first of all, didn't exist, and secondly, in which he had a pecuniary interest. The committee didn't have the authority to make extensions to the program, and the program actually never existed legally. It was never authorized by council. All we knew about it was what we'd heard from the former CAO. He floated the idea as a balloon, like just a really quick, we could try this as well to encourage people to move out quicker. And he said he'd bring us back costs and all kinds of other details, and those never came back to us. We didn't approve the program. You know, to me, I don't have a problem just with the taxpayers' money being wasted like this without us knowing, but I have a problem with the way this was all done through the manipulations of the former CAO. And, you know, I'm sorry, but my feeling on the matter is we were swindled.
Mr. Todd.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one comment just with respect to the dollars, and I appreciate the councillors talking about the money that was paid out, but the report does indicate that even with that money that was paid out to the 8 individuals, there still was a net overall savings at the end of the year of a little over $200,000 that would not have been realized otherwise if the individuals had continued to be in our employ. And the opportunity that presented to gain us the $300,000 plus savings in 2010 may not have availed itself either.
I have a motion, by the way, to go beyond 11 o'clock. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Carey. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Ioannoni.
Thank you. I also want to highlight to Council, we passed the March 19th motion that I made. And in it, we approved the Mercer Delta. And I want to tell you what we approved in the Mercer Delta. Under operating environment, this is March 19th, remember, so you understand the timeline. Resulting from the organizational assessment, the city has a draft code of ethics / conflict of interest that addresses such matters as conflict of interest, disclosure, respect, truth, honesty, integrity, excellence, use of property, acceptance of gifts, favors, and entertainment. We passed that. Under roles and responsibilities of the CAO, there's a number of them. The bottom 3, ensuring council receives appropriate reports and information necessary for decision making. Assisting council in the development of a corporate strategic plan and directing the development and implementation of corporate policies and programs. So we passed this. We accept it as a guiding document, whether it's intent or not. I know what my motion meant. And the 3 things and the conflict of interest that we passed on March 19th isn't disclosed when the letter to accept the early retirement bonus option that we didn't pass is submitted to HR on March 30th. So 11 days later, this report that was submitted to us and we passed wasn't even followed. So I will ask the question again. If there is no guiding motion, and I don't care how much the CAO says that we saved, that's totally not the point, and I know you understand that. If there is no guiding motion of this council to approve that program, how can we say that it was a legitimate offer to the former CAO from this corporation? I don't know. Can someone answer?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the answer I can give you, part of it was explained at our in-camera session 2 weeks ago, and that was given in detail by the solicitor. I would say that, publicly though, that staff believed they had the direction at the time to proceed. I've spoken at length with the staff. They felt that direction was there, and that's what they proceeded on. And Mr. Mayor, that's about all I'd like to say about that publicly.
Thank you. To that point, please. I do understand Mr. Todd's position in this, and really, I mean, what else are we going to say? But I will point you to page 2, paragraph 2 of Mr. Todd's report. Following these meetings, the 26th and February 26th and March 19th, following these meetings with council and with the approval of the Chief Administrative Officer, the Chief Administrative Officer didn't have authority to give any approval to the HR committee or any other staff in regards to a golden handshake agreement to leave this corporation. His own report says it all. So, you know, I know we can debate back and forth. I didn't believe it was in camera. I don't believe it's in camera now. I don't believe there's any expectation of privacy on somebody's salary that is subject to the Sunshine Act. And I just want the residents to know that at no point did we vote for that to happen.
Councillor Carrier.
Do you think we could get them to play this tape back so the residents could really know? Anyway, if you don't have a recommendation, I'd move the recommendations that are here unless you have something else you want to.
No, I would second 1 to 5. I'd like to pull 6.
You'd like to pull 6?
Pull 6, please.
You mean just eliminate 6?
No, move 1 to 5, I'd like to speak
Okay,
to 6.
I'll move 1 to 5, Your Worship.
I'll second that.
A motion to approve recommendations 1 to 5.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Iannone. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Pardon?
25 is all but the human resources.
Does everybody have it in front of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pardon? All those, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? 1 to 5, please raise your hands. Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on the matter. I don't disagree with Mr. Todd's comments, but I compliment Councillor Iannone on her comments and her concerns. And I think that I'd like to ask a question through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Todd with respect to the CAO's position. Is it not, in your opinion, unique in that it answers directly to council? And in a situation like that where a program is being passed, and of course I agree that we did not know, and if you ask me if I would approve of a golden handshake for somebody to retire early, I don't think it happens anyplace else, and I know in your report you mentioned any further ones that come forward. I hope there's none that come forward in the next foreseeable future, because I think it's inappropriate, and I don't think it's done anyplace else, and I don't think it's necessary. If somebody wants to retire, there's an opportunity through OMERS that they can do that, but there is a very special relationship between the CAO and the council, and if somebody is taking advantage of a report that is going to benefit them individually, would that not require, in that situation alone, approval of the council in your mind?
Mr. Todd.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is my own personal view of the role of the CAO. The CAO is technically the only employee of the council that you directly hire, and the rest of the employees work for the CAO. And just stating that, I think that shows that there's a different level of either responsibility or commitment with the CAO as opposed to any other employee. So I guess in that terms, I would view that relationship as being different. And in my own personal view, that would probably bring a much different level of accountability to directly to council, with the rest of the staff reporting directly to the CAO.
So, in other words, the council should have been directly involved in any kind of discussions with respect to the topic that we're discussing here tonight.
Well, as we tried to outline in the report, I think our view is that those reporting lines could be better. I would think that in the future, any program like that...
I don't want to hear that they could be better. I think they're very clearly defined.
Yes.
I think that it is a direct responsibility of you as the CAO, if we're talking about something specific that relates directly to you, whether it's pecuniary or not, it should be dealt with and reported to the council.
And absolutely, and that's really sort of the part of the crux of Recommendation 6. It's showing that different onus where a committee of council would be directly dealing with the relationship with the CAO.
It exists and should have been abided by, and regardless if we saved $300 and some odd $1,000, we blew $400,000, and we blew it without the council knowing about it, and I feel that we've been duped for sure.
Councillor Iannone.
Thank you. About number 6, that the Human Resources Committee continue to act on an ad hoc basis for special assignments such as CAO performance review. Just so everybody, I'd like to be involved in the CAO performance review. we're all starting brand new with the new CAO, and I don't think it should be just 4 people reviewing them. I think it should be all of us. We all interviewed them. I think we should all be reviewing them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good recommendation. The CAO expects that.
But that's not what this motion says. This motion says
but if that's the pleasure of council, he said that he had no problem with that issue. I don't know whether other members of council have a concern, but...
No, then I'd like to scrap the HR committee and ask that all the council be involved in the CAO performance review.
Well, the suggestion was that we just go to that point, but Councillor Carey, did you want to make a motion?
I'm going to move that we just eliminate the Human Resources Committee and all matters relating to staff go to the Corporate Services Committee.
Somebody second.
Okay, moved by Councillor Carey, seconded by Councillor Ine. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. Move on if we can, please. Is there any additional... Sorry. We have the consent agenda. Sorry. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Just one moment, please. CAO is indicating that our Director of HR wants to make a comment.
Yeah, if I could just, through your worship, members of council, if I could just make a comment about the early retirement incentive program. I think there's been some comments made tonight that we spent an additional $400,000 that was, not budgeted for, and I think that that might be a bit of a misconception in terms of what happened. What really happened here is that the corporation was able to save money by deleting some of the positions that had become vacant as a result of the retirements. And for the other positions that were replaced, the idea was to delay the filling of the vacancies for a period of up to 6 months, so that we could pay the budgeted costs of the retirement incentive. The fact is, if we didn't offer this incentive, these individuals would not have retired early as they did, and we wouldn't have achieved the savings that we did.
Thank you. I think we've dealt with it. Thank you very much. Move on to the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Carey, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. All those in favour? Motion's carried. We have a resolution as well. Therefore, it be resolved that the Minister of Transportation and Ministry staff investigate amendments to the Highway Traffic Act that will allow for the seizure of vehicles, increased fines, and any other penalties that will effectively deter the illegal cab trade. Moved by Councillor Wing, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo. Any discussion or comment? Councillor Wing?
Well, yeah, I was reading the correspondence attached to this, and I just can't understand the ministry's position. They're saying they don't want to put this into place unless there's a clear link between the offense and road safety. Well, I'm sorry, but the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act is something which the ministry enforces, and if it's not linked to road safety, then I don't know what is. And unsafe vehicles, I think that unsafe vehicles would be a concern for the ministry as well, and that unsafe vehicles would be pretty clearly linked to road safety. So I don't follow their arguments at all, and I think it's high time they got on board and helped us deal with this.
Well, Councillor, we do have a letter directly from the Minister, and he indicates that that's not possible, and the seizure of vehicles is not the ability, nor would he support that. So we do have that correspondence and right from the Minister.
Not to interrupt you, but they're saying, no, we can't do this unless there's a clear link between the offense and road safety. And I'm saying there is a clear link. We're talking about people in violation of the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. We're talking about unsafe vehicles in a lot of cases. Everybody knows what the speedy cabs are all about, and they're not licensed, they're not inspected. These are people scrambling to make a buck, putting whatever vehicle they have on the road, and there's a lot of problems, and it's a wonder we haven't had a tragedy happen yet.
Well, we have certainly met with members of the taxi cab industry even today, and we talked about that as well. This is a matter that the region of Niagara deals with through its licensing portfolio, and they handle the licensing, and we have been endeavoring to eradicate illegal cabs, which has been a challenge for many, many years. People have been sent to jail for operating illegal cabs. What we're talking about is further requests by the region to ask for the support. We're sending that support to the Minister. He wrote back and saying he will not consider their recommendations, so we're sending a resolution off further. It'll be up to the Minister again to deal with that, so we'll send that resolution. Well, it's on its way. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional bylaws for Council's consideration, I should say?
A couple of things, Your Worship. You will note that as per the Corporate Services Ratification Bylaw 2009-120 will not be going. It's been pulled, so that will sequentially lead to changes in the last three bylaws that are listed. A couple things with regard to the Development Charges Bylaw. Number one, the bylaw was done in very quick fashion in relation to the report, so as a result there are some grammatical errors, things like that that need to be changed. So with that knowledge, we will make those sort of housekeeping changes as far as formatting, etc. Secondly, as was pointed out earlier, when you did not make an amendment to change the effective date. So the effective date on that bylaw is tonight's date. Is that clear to everybody at council? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I was just advised as well that we didn't call the motion on the communications. Let's go back to that if you wouldn't mind. On the resolution. We got the resolution done? We got that done? Sorry, Mr.
Yep, it was Councillor Wing and Councillor Peter Angelo, and I got approved unanimous. We didn't call the vote?
All the vote? Okay. Okay. Sorry.
I assumed it was unanimous.
Yes, all those in favor? It's
told you.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thanks for pointing that out. Appreciate that. Alrighty, so, Mr. Clerk, bylaws, please. So the clerk's made the point with regard to the bylaws in respect of the one matter. And at this time, then I'll ask that the... Yeah, first, yeah, certainly. A motion to give the bylaws a first reading, moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, second by Councillor David Addy. Once again, Council has heard the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried, Mr. Clerk.
Bylaws 2009-115 to 2009-122 be read a first time.
Okay, can I have a motion to give the bylaws a second and third reading, moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, second by Councillor David Addy. Once again, Council has heard the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2009-115 to 2009-122 read a second and third time and passed.
Thank you. Is there any new business this evening? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, first of all, if we're going to be discussing the condominium issue in the future, I wonder if we could ask staff if they could determine how many conversions in the last several years, particularly the existing ones, that have been fully sold, or what the status is of several of them. And I'd make a motion to that effect just to see where we stand with that.
Motion by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Wing, asking staff to review or to indicate to us how many condo conversions have taken place in the last how many years?
Let's give us 5 years.
Last 5 years. Okay. Council's heard the motion. Any questions or comments? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Yeah, the other new business started off about 3 weeks ago when I received an email from Mr. Powell indicating his concern about the shark fin issue with respect to the local casino. And I responded to that when I first got it, simply because I observed a documentary several years ago where they were fish netting sharks, pulling them onto the boat, cutting the fins off, throwing the fins in a bin, and throwing the sharks live back into the water. And at that particular time, I thought it was horrifying that they could do that. They didn't even take, at least they could have taken the time to kill the animal and before they threw it back in the water, but they didn't even have the decency to do that. And I asked the individual for additional information, which might have been a mistake, but and I guess the whole council have been flooded with these emails regarding the shark population and how it's being affected by this type of activity. And there is a real campaign out there to try to dissuade people from utilizing shark fin for food. and they particularly spearheaded the local casino, the Golden Lotus restaurant at the Rama Casino. Oh, did I say Rama? I meant Falls View Casino, intentionally. Anyway, I would like to have the clerk prepare a resolution simply because it's local. It's in Niagara Falls. There's a government agency that is responsible for that facility who should be setting an example in these particular areas. And because of my personal experience in seeing how these shark fins are obtained by the depletion of the shark population in the world, and I would like to at least voice our opinion because it is in our municipality. And I want to just go on to say that I've seen comments in the newspaper in the last while about, is that really your business? Should you really be talking? It's got nothing to do with the local council. Well, I strongly disagree with that type of thinking, simply because if there's anything we can do with the power of this local organization, this council, to have any positive impact on any situation, whether it's in the Niagara region, in Canada, in the world, anywhere. In fact, that's why you go to AMO. All of the resolutions deal with provincial, federal, and international situations with passports and other issues. So I don't think these kinds of resolutions are out of line at all. If we can have that much of an impact on what's going on with the use of shark fins in the Niagara region, then I think that's a positive step forward. So I would ask the clerk to bring in a final resolution dealing with this whole issue of the shark population, because my first question to Mr. Powell when he wrote me was, what of other municipalities? Have you been involved with other municipalities? And that sort of started the ball rolling, where he said, no, he's never thought about doing that, and thank you for taking on this, and that's when all of the resolutions started. So there is a real interest in doing that, and if you can see, and as you can see from the emails that were sent in, a lot of people who are environmentally minded, certainly they would not come to the area simply because of the activity that is going on with respect to the shark fin issue and the way it's being handled at the Falls View Casino. So I would so move.
Councillor, I think we should just qualify that so that Council is going to voice its objection to the use of shark fin. Is that your point? You haven't said one way or the other whether you support it or not. You don't like what's happening, so are you voicing your opinion against it?
Did I make that clear?
No. You want to talk about serving shark fin soup?
Absolutely. Is that what and also to the provincial government, I'd like this to go, and also the federal government to establish some requirements and regulations with respect to the utilization of shark fins in public places.
So you're suggesting that towns go on record as opposing the use of shark fins for that purpose, okay? Seconded by Councillor Wing. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Wing.
I would just like to really thank Councillor Thompson for bringing this forward. And, the Community in Bloom's judges arrive tomorrow. Environmental awareness is one of the categories on which we're being judged. And, with this becoming prominent in our community, I understand there's a demonstration. If they should get wind of this, I think it behooves us to have gone on record in opposition to the practice and be trying to do what we can to oppose it in our community. So thank you very much for bringing that forward.
Okay. Councillor Carrio.
Are we just talking about at the casino? Or are we talking about shark fin soup worldwide? Province, what are we talking about?
Do you want to?
You're not just targeting Falls View Casino.
Yes, we are, but it can be generalized also.
I could support it if you're going to be doing it generally, but if you're just going to target Falls View Casino for whatever reason, I won't support it.
So let's qualify that again. The use of shark fins?
I think generally, but because of the, it's been identified locally, that's how it was brought to our attention. I certainly am not going to. I think there's other changes. I mean, well, exactly. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Councillor Maves.
No, I'm just concerned about the resolution. We can do these resolutions, but will it stop some of the emails? Like after I get 15 or 20, I consider that harassment, and I don't like being badgered. And sometimes I think I want to vote the opposite way when there's a little bit of overkill. That's my own personal opinion. But once I get 2 or 3 emails about a certain subject, it's implanted in my mind what has to be done or what should be done. But I find it very harassing to get 15, 20, 30 emails about the same subject. So I just like to clarify that who's ever behind this movement that they just slow down with the messages. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I think you have to appreciate that this isn't a local group of people. This probably, your emails were probably coming from right across Canada and maybe even beyond that. And these people don't know that you are getting, or how many you're getting. And this was an isolated situation. I'm still getting revitalized Queen Street constantly, and you just see them and you click them off. But this was one isolated situation, and I think these people have a legitimate cause.
Okay. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Councillor Ioannoni, Councillor Pietrangelo, and Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council will remember, maybe vaguely, that 6 months ago, 5 months ago, we sent a resolution and a request to David Kaplan asking that the Minister of Health sit with the city's ad hoc committee in regards to the HIP. June 26, I got my response, and no, he does not have time to meet with the HIP committee. We're deadly shocked here. But in his response to me, he says he supports the work of the Hamilton, Niagara, Haldeman, Brant, Lynn, and what it has done towards the stabilizing hospital services in Niagara and preparing for the future. He also supports the intent of the HIP, which, might I remind everybody here, the intent of the HIP was to keep our Matt Child open until the new hospital. It did not include early closing of our Matt Child, so I'm glad to hear that. And I understand we're going to AMO, and have we made, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, have we made a request to meet anybody at AMO yet?
Not yet. You have a memo in your package today.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we send a request to Deputy Premier Smitherman, who is David Kaplan's boss, and maybe get an audience with Smitherman and talk to him about our concerns about the HIP. I don't know how many are going. I know right now I'm presently registered for AMO, and anything short of the delivery of my granddaughter between now and AMO, I will be there. But I'd like to see Smitherman being one that we be able to meet and talk to about the HIP plan. And I mean, Kaplan turned us down last year. Let's hope Smitherman's a little bit more open-minded. Do you need a motion for that request
Yes,
to go?
I'd like
I
to
move that.
Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, seconded by Councillor Wing. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Pietrangelo. I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Well, just related to that, I know there's been some discussions internally between myself, you, Your Worship, and Mr. Todd, and we also were going to make submissions to meet with Minister Duncan, who now has the gaming portfolio, and possibly Minister Fonseca, who's the Minister of Labor, related to the issue that we discussed earlier this evening in camera.
I wanted to bring those up, but certainly while we're on it, we could make a motion to address those two ministers as well. So moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Motion is carried. So those three ministers, thank you. Now, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the recent Prince of Wales horse race,
yes,
the horse that won was being ridden by the jockey Corey Fraser from Niagara Falls. I'm wondering if I guess your office has invited him to City Council.
I believe that's in the works, but we'll formalize it. So if you would like to make that motion, that's fine. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati, that we formally invite the jockey winner of the Prince of Wales to Niagara Falls Council to suitably congratulate him. Okay, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to be quick. I've got three things. First thing, Your Worship, I think we're all aware that the Niagara Regional Police have been looking and considering Niagara Falls as one of the possible new sites for their new headquarters. And unfortunately, they've been taking some badgering from certain members of different political groups. Anyway, Your Worship, I'd like this council, the support, to send a letter of support to the Niagara Regional Police Services Board in support of their attempt to achieve the best policing for the Niagara region at the best cost by way of the most efficient means, incorporating best practices without political influence or interference in deciding a location for the NRP HQ. So
moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by
Kind of contradictory.
Councillor Ioannoni. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Now you know, Councillor, they've gone off to OCOPS. There may be a hearing date set for actually 3 weeks in September. I believe personally that the OCOPS has the ability to make that decision, but that's still a challenge and a question in many councillors' minds, certainly at the region. There's been a lot of gnashing of teeth. We've made our submission, and I think that stands, and we have the chief has made her recommendations, and that's the whole principle upon which we're relying at this stage.
I just thought, Your Worship, that maybe the Police Services Board has taken received some cheap shots from different people and different groups, and I thought it would be nice to show some support for them and going along their path to make a decision. Second thing, Your Worship, piggybacking on Councillor Iannoni's comments about the NHS, it just seems we just have challenge after challenge with the NHS, Your Worship. It just seems they don't get it. They just don't get it. They don't understand that they manage public money for the public. They seem to think it's a dictatorship, and unfortunately they've got some support of the province. It's unknown why they would support such a direction that they've already eroded the confidence of the public, the confidence of the health professionals. They've eroded all of the support and of all the people that need to be working with the NHS, Your Worship, but unfortunately they continue down this path. I just found out today, Your Worship, that our chief of the emergency room resigned today of the GNGH. That's 2 GNGH ER doctors that have now left. Looks like the entire department might be going, Your Worship. The NHS has refused any negotiation. They seem hell-bent on handing the department over to MedEmerge. And for those of you that don't know, they're basically doctors for hire. It's Kelly Services for Doctors. And they don't want to deal with any kind of opposition from doctors, Your Worship. It's really frustrating. It's disenchanting. It's not the way that you want to run a department. And, I kind of laugh because at the bottom of their letterhead it says, focus on those we serve, bring out the best in each other, build strong and successful relationships, create a better way, and use our resources wisely. Your Worship, that's sad. If they followed those policies, I think they'd be set. Right now the message is clear. Resistance is futile. Conform or be attacked, and break the will and the spirit. And they're doing it again of the doctors, Your Worship. It's a divide and conquer approach. And now they're dismantling our ER. They're going to bring in hired doctors, doctors for hire, MedEmerge. And it's unfortunate, Your Worship, that this is a direction that we're on. And I would ask, Your Worship, through you, that we request a public meeting with the NHS to deal with this situation.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by Councillor Iannoni. Public meeting with NHS.
No.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
And lastly, Your Worship, I know we've been dealing with, and we read in the media, the problems with the overspray from the Gale Centre, and I would ask staff to give us a verbal report. It's happened again, Your Worship. The painting is still not done. There's been numerous complaints, and people are frustrated that they feel that although we've got a contractor doing the work, and this is a subcontractor of the contractor, ultimately they answer to the council, And ultimately, Your Worship, they're asking and looking for some direction and leadership from us, and I would ask for some verbal report, Your Worship.
Certainly. Mr. Beeman or Mr. Todd, who would like to, actually, Mr. Dulovic?
Yeah, through Your Worship, staff have been following up with the situation. I know we've provided some updates to Councillor Diodati on it. Difficulty is, I mean, there is a contractual relationship here, and in no way are we involved with the day-to-day direction of how the contractor, subcontractor carries out their work. I know early on in the process when we did talk about it, our staff and our architect did ask how they were going to be painting these beams, and they did question the method they were going to do. But clearly, if we start directing contractors or subcontractors on how they're going to do the work, we're liable to any extras that may be involved. They may say, well, that's going to cost us more. You're going to have to pay for that cost. You know, they bid on the project to do it a certain way. The MOE has been involved. I mean, they didn't issue an order, but they did talk to the general contractor, well, the subcontractor, about how they should do the work and wait for favorable wind conditions before they do any future painting out there. Unfortunately, we have expressed our concerns to the contractor and the issues that have arisen. We're approaching 50 claims on this matter right now, and we continue to, as of today, we continue to communicate the concerns that this council has and the residents have with the method that they're using out there and the problems that they're creating in that neighborhood.
Mr. Dulovic, again, I just advise that we should share with the members of the public. We have 50 claims that are filed against the contractor. Is that correct?
Well, what's happened is that because people seem to think that it is a city project, and they filed the claims with the city. And what's happened is we forwarded all of those claims on to the general contractor, and they have to deal with all those claims. How they deal with their subcontractor on it is a different story, because we have a contract with the general contractor. We don't have a direct contractual relationship with the subcontractor, so who we deal with is the general contractor. It's very clear. We don't get into telling them how they go about doing the actual activities that they do out of there, because then it exposes us to liability and increased cost potentially if we're going to start directing how they're going to carry out the work. But we have shared the concerns that have been expressed by the residents as well as this council as to what's going on out there, and is there any other method that they could use, short of telling them how to do it. Are there other ways they could do this to minimize the impacts that they're having on the neighbors?
We are understanding that the MOE had advised the contractor only to spray on certain days when the wind was in the correct.
Really, they didn't issue an order, but they did talk about under favorable conditions, and really, non-wind days, or if the wind was in another direction, that it wasn't taking the material out over the residential neighborhood.
And for those who have claims, our other concern was that they'd be made whole with respect to any costs on their deductible.
Again, that's an issue that has to be resolved by the contractor and his insurance company, or however he deals with it, and how he deals with the sub and dealing with all the claims that are coming in. From my understanding, these people, they haven't gone to their insurance companies. They've made a claim against the city, and the city has passed that on to the general contractor, who is contractually obligated to deal with those claims.
Thank you very much. Councillor?
Yes, Your Worship. Well, that's great. And I just want to reassure any residents that are listening that are actually still up right now that we're not going to just leave them on their own. We're going to make sure that they get taken care of. It's pretty bad when the MOE has to advise them, wait for favorable wind conditions. You'd think they're painters. They would know that, Your Worship. But either way, as long as the people realize that we're going to make sure that they get taken care of, that's the most important thing.
I appreciate you bringing it forward. We have been dealing with it through the City Hall channels, and we have advised the people accordingly that these matters are being dealt with by the contractor, will be dealt with, and we've passed on the claims to them. So, okay, thank you. Any other new business? Motion adjourned by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Mays. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.